Okay, all the board members here?
Yes.
We're all here.
Okay, sounds good. It is 1 PM on Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. And I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board to order. The first item on the agenda is announcements, open sessions, and public comments. The public comments must be brief. The board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Do we have anything? Looks like Lily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to draw attention to the Human Services webpage on the county website. There's a lot of great information that can help a lot of our citizens and maybe even the town in areas of emergency rental assistance, food assistance, Medicare enrollment, online mindfulness courses listed there. And there's also information at the county website about the 2020 census, which the last time I looked is at only 48% in Barnstable County. That is a very low number. And as we all know, a lot of our funding in Barnstable County comes from these numbers. So I urge anybody that hasn't filled out the census, received confirmation that they have filled it out in full, to go online or to call somebody if they don't know how to go online, but to get it done as soon as they possibly can. And I would also urge you to check and make sure that your data is recorded. Our Secretary of State has raised that question, and I urge people to make sure that your voice is counted. Thank you.
Maria Broadbent?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to see if the chairman would allow us to talk a little bit about the drinking water issues that we've had in the last few days at the beginning of the agenda.
Yeah, so this would be the place to do it because we don't have an agenda item on it, so we can't discuss it. But any updates or comments or anything like that are welcome.
And with that, I'm gonna ask if Rebecca Eldridge or Mr. Hood are on the meeting right now so that they can go through what's transpired and what our status is.
I can see Rebecca's on here.
This is Jim Hood. I'm on as well. And we have Eric Smith from Whitewater with us.
So I'm gonna turn it over to the three of them if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that would be great. I was hoping that this would happen at this point in the meeting. So.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Eric, would you want to give us a rundown of what the events were and where we're at with it now, please?
Starting at the beginning or with the most current news-related sampling?
Let's start from the beginning.
We have not shared anything with the select board up until now.
Oh, okay. I'll be brief on my explanation, and then I'm open for any questions that I can help with. But starting on, let me see here. We were notified on the 24th of an E. coli hit out at the Coles Neck well. Samples collected on the 23rd, but notified on the 24th of that. We reached out to DEP at that time, which is the normal process and procedure related to any hits, whether they be coliform related or total coliform or E. coli related. And we had a discussion with them at that time. The Coles Neck pump station has not been being utilized for some time as a source for supplying drinking water to the system. So we did have some back and forth discussion with DEP on that matter. There were additional samples taken on Thursday, the 24th, a confirmation on the 25th and that was right outside of the Coles Neck gristmill well. And on the 25th, we received confirmation of a detect in the distribution system off of Coles Neck Road, and that precipitated additional sampling and the boil water notice that was issued from DEP, supporting information put in by Whitewater and submitted to the commission on Saturday, the 26th. Since then, and as we had been before, following DEP's guidelines and recommendations regarding this process and procedure. So that started with flushing on Sunday, the 27th, throughout the collection system at the out on Coles Neck Road. That was pretty much throughout the whole day on Sunday. We also began disinfection at our primary water source within the system, the Boy Scout Camp wells, and we chlorinated both wells. We also did manual chlorination of the supporting water tank and conducted that throughout Sunday to put us in a position to start sampling additional analytical work on Monday. Samples were collected and we received results yesterday that all of those samples across the collection system, including at the Boy Scout well, within town, and out at the supporting areas where we had any detects and the end of the line at Coles Neck and I call it Coles Neck / Gristmill pump station there. So that was good news to get all clean samples back. We conducted additional sampling yesterday independent of that. About 2 minutes before I came on this call, I just received the information from our compliance group that the second round of compliance samples had all come back clean. We've collected additional samples today, and if those come back clean tomorrow, we are in a position to potentially relieve the boil water notice across town. It'll be at DEP's approval and everything else that goes along with that, but so far all the results have come back good. There's been system-wide chlorination, residuals monitored across the system, and all the supporting analytical data that goes along with that. And our team has been on site since last week, performing all these supporting work as required by Mass DEP.
Thank you, Eric.
Ellen has a question.
We're really not asking questions, right? Can't deliberate.
We can't deliberate, we can't express an opinion, but we can ask questions to the
Yes, of course.
announcements. But we cannot state an opinion. Go ahead, Helen.
That's right. It's a question. It was just a piece of data that wasn't supplied. Through you to Mr. Smith, where does the water that is, chlorinated, in other words, the flush water, where does that get discharged? Or does it simply flow through the system and then there's residual chlorination in the system for some time after that? What do you do with all that chlorinated water? Does it get put somewhere? Does it get discharged, or does it stay in the system, or what happens? Please.
Absolutely. To answer that question, the concentrations that are out in the system are relatively low. The goal is to get some chlorine residual to know that we have disinfection throughout the system. Ultimately, the chlorine, there is dissipation that happens within the system, and there's some flushing. The flushing primarily took place Sunday when we were working to get chlorine into the system, so there probably wasn't much discharge of any chlorine at that time, very little. And then there was some additional flushing done at the end of the lines off of Whitetail and Oak Ridge on Monday. But I'm not aware of, and from Sunday into Monday out at Coles Neck, and that's surface discharge with concentrations at I believe less than half a part of chlorine. So in a typical chlorinated system, which is not what you have within the town, but in a typical chlorinated system, it's not uncommon to see anywhere from a half a part to 2 parts of chlorine across the system. So the allowable amount the maximum allowable amount of chlorine allowed within a system is typically around 4 ppm, and we're well below that. Again, we've been running at typically less than half a part. So there's a significant amount of bandwidth there that we could provide additional chlorination without any effect on public health or anything along those lines, or the environment. And we're well below those levels on what we've been doing thus far.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a quick question, and that is, do we know what the source is for the E. coli? Has there been a source point found? And the other question I have is, basically, were there any illnesses as a result that we know of?
This is still Eric here, and I can speak to the system components of it. The illness, I'm not aware of any illnesses related to the system, but specifically related to the source. We have suspicions when it comes to getting bacteria and bacteria of this nature in the system. It would, as noted in the boil water notice, it's typically of a human or animal type bacteria. And to get that into the system, there's certain bacteria that can grow within a system from stagnation, warmer weather, a whole host of different things. But the E. coli bacteria specifically would often come from human and or animal. If that happens, in most cases, that would be introduced at either the wells or potentially at the water tank. Now, we don't know definitively. I don't know if we would ever know with absolute certainty where the source was. There are indications. Our first hit of E. coli was at the Coles Neck gristmill pump station, not in the well, but just at a sample tap that's within about 100 feet of that well. So that was our first detection. Our follow-up sampling that was performed within 24 hours of that came back non-detect at that point, but we did find E. coli out in the collection system at that point. So is it likely that was the source? Yes. But I absolutely, I can't say definitively. So in working with Mass DEP and our operations group, to assure, public health and the appropriate response, we did chlorinate at our primary source, the source that has been used to supply water to the town, at the Boy Scout camp, chlorinated there and chlorinated at the water tank to allow that disinfection to go throughout the entire system, so that we weren't assuming that it was just the source was the Coles Neck gristmill pump station. And just so everybody knows, and if there's some confusion about that, the Coles Neck gristmill pump station has been offline for some time, and confirmed since at least April. But what we do at that pump station is perform some routine flushing. There's a hydrant located just outside the pump station. We open that hydrant, run the pumps periodically to flush and keep those wells active, so that if in the event that we either lost another well or needed to supply water, that you would have a backup water source there. So that's why they are utilized to some degree. And there's a possibility that could introduce water and or, in this case, bacteria into the system. So that's why I say it's a possible source, but we just don't know definitively.
And one final question, and then I'll move on to the rest of the board, is, was there any E. coli found in any residential water supply tests? Did you guys test water from houses or anything, or was it just located at that source and in the system?
So yeah, when we're testing out in the distribution system, we're often testing at homes. If we can gain access, that's the ideal route. Sometimes exterior taps and things like that across the system. It can be at houses, but throughout town, the DPW, the sinks and things like that. So there were locations within the system, and it was not just that primary source was at the Coles Neck pump station at a tap, but any of the other E. coli hits that were, I believe it was 3 hits in total, were within the distribution system along Coles Neck, Whitetail, and Oak Ridge.
Okay, at residences.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay, and I think I saw Ryan's hand up next.
Hillary has her hand up, I think, to answer
Okay,
your
yeah,
question.
maybe let's go to Hillary first. She can provide some info.
Sure. I just wanted to just put out a reminder again that private wells were not affected by the boil water order. So we're taking a lot of calls from residents wondering about their private wells. And along that same line, I can remind people that we have bottles here at the Health and Conservation Department for folks to come in, give us a call before time. We'll put the bottles outside. You take them home to your house. You can sample your private well and bring them back to us on a Tuesday or Thursday morning. And there's a courier that comes down and takes them down to Barnstable County to run the lab results. So that option is available to our private well owners who are concerned about their water quality as well. So I just wanted to put that info out there.
Thank you, Hillary. Ryan?
Yes, my question is, if the first detection was on the 24th, why was the public not notified until 2 days after that point?
I assume this is Eric again, I assume that's to me. We followed DEP's protocols and procedures for any of the reporting that goes along with that. So typically when you get a detect, whether it's total coliform or E. coli, there's sampler error, there can be lab error and a few other things. So they often ask for additional supporting analytical to be collected. And that was done on the 24th for the results that were received on the 25th. There was some question because the Coles Neck gristmill pump station was not officially, supplying water to the system with the Boy Scout wells and things like that. There was some gray area on that as well.
And so the 25th is when you had confirmation?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's when we had an actual detect in the collection system.
And again, the question is why at that point did it take till the next night for the public to be notified?
DEP required us to collect an additional round of sampling, which we did. And upon that collection and positive result, that was when we got in touch with the board for the boil water notice and got the communication out.
Okay.
Okay, Justina?
Yes, I just want to review who was available to get the word out. And first I'd like to ask Eric from Whitewater, how many Whitewater staff regularly work in Wellfleet?
I apologize, I missed your name on that one, but
Absolutely, Justina.
Justina, okay.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what we have for tasks going on down there. Just directly supporting sample and analytical and things like that. We typically have one operator from our group down there. But if there's other work going on, such as flushing and other projects going on across the system, we may have up to 2, 3, 4 either operators or distribution staff down across the project.
Sure, but the last time I looked at the contract, it fulfills the state minimum of 4 hours a day. Is that correct?
I believe that would be correct.
Right. So it's not an army of people. And then I believe that there's one person, Jim Hood, in the water office who works part-time as a town stopper.
Jim or Rebecca, you could speak better to that than I could.
I'm the only one that's in the water office. So I was here and Jim was here with me for a few hours on Sunday morning. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning and that's how we notified every person on the water system.
Because when I called in to see, when I got a call from you guys, I called in to see how you guys were doing. So I know there was some complaints on social media. Why doesn't the town do things different? But
I have a point of order, Justina. We can't express opinions right now, so I just want to make sure.
well, it's fax who works for the water system.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just reminding.
Yeah. So, I see what you're saying. I'm straying into criticizing.
Straying into opinion.
Yeah, it's a thinly staffed system.
Okay. Helen, well, Jim, I think Jim wants to speak now, and then I'll go back to Helen because she already asked.
That's
but-
fine.
I just wanted to add to what Eric said about the sequence on the testing, that the testing that was done on Wednesday, the 23rd, was routine testing. And it included, in addition to the Coles Neck wells, it included the Boy Scout camp well and the storage tank on Lawrence Road. And both of those came back clear. And when they were subsequently tested on the 25th, those results came back clear as well. So there was no indication at any time that of bacterial contamination in the storage tank or at the Boy Scout camp well site.
Okay, Helen.
Yes, question to Eric Smith, please, through you. You just said that the well in North Wellfleet, grist mill / Coles Neck well, hadn't been in use, hadn't been contributing to the system since April. Does that mean that there was no circulating flow of water from that well to the rest of the network of pipes? And then, depending on the answer, I have another question.
Sure, Helen, I'll do my best to answer that. Not knowingly. So the system was not fully isolated from the rest of the distribution system, but as I said, the intent has always been to keep that well as a backup source and keep it as a viable backup source to be utilized in an emergency or whatever else that may arise. So the system was tested, as Jim mentioned, as part of the system, and routine flushing was done right there at the well. There's a hydrant right there that allows us to open that and flush locally without having to push water out into the system, or that is at the intent there. There are certainly some variables in system pressures and things like that across the system that could have allowed water from the Coles Neck grist mill pump station into the distribution system. I can't say definitively if that happened or not, but it could have. Because our closest point for isolation beyond the pump station, where there's some valving immediately there, I believe is a valving at Route 6.
Right. So the area where there were E. coli readings on Oak Ridge and White, in other words, part of the system that was our first system, which was called the Coles Neck system, which supplied the area around the transfer station, right? So they don't currently get water from North Wellfleet anymore, from the Gristwell Coles Neck wells anymore.
The entire system currently is being fed from the Boy Scout wells and the storage tank ultimately.
Thank you for answering my question. I also have one more piece of information, which is I heard that there were robocalls notifying people about this, but many people hang up on them, so they didn't get that. A lot of people didn't get the information, but another person I know never got notified. She was told by somebody else on the system and was told that the in-person calls stopped at M. In other words, the person who was making the in-person calls stopped calling people at M for whatever reason. I'm not saying it was bad or good, but that's what happened. So that piece of information I'm sharing. That's all. Thank you.
Eldridge?
I'm just going to tell you, Helen, that's not a true fact. I was here Sunday from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 p.m. at night. I started with Baker Avenue and I ended with Whitetail Lane. Unfortunately, the people that did not get notified were ones that have not updated me with their new phone numbers, new emails. A lot of the numbers that I had in my files were ones of people that have owned the property years ago. So Jim Hood and I made flyers, and the properties that we couldn't get a hold of, we put flyers in their door. We did our best for the robocalls. Unfortunately, I wasn't sure how to use the Code Red system, which I will be making better effort to learn. But Hillary and I just met this afternoon right before the meeting, and she has a health emergency line. I have put all of the contacts who are only on the water system into her system, and we did a test run and it seemed to work. So we're going to try and do that and update people who are just on the water system right now for test results coming back and when the boil water order. I will again be making personal phone calls as soon as this order is lifted to every single person on the water system.
Okay. Well,
Thank you. That's important information, and I'm glad I asked the questions. Thank
Me too.
you.
Okay. Well, thank you. Do we have any more, any other announcements or public comments?
I have one, Mr. Chair, from the Community Preservation Committee.
Sure.
They've said the deadline for the Wellfleet Community Preservation Act applications is Thursday, October 15th at 4 p.m. The applications and guidelines are available on the town website, and you may contact Mary Rogers. They must be received by the 15th to be considered, and the committee considers requests for projects that foster community housing, historical preservation, open space, and non-commercial recreation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on.
Mike, I need to thank John Morrissey.
Go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, in this, we always do this. We got an official resignation from John Morrissey, who has been a library trustee for years and was on the select board and has done numerous other things. And on the behalf of the select board, I hope I can send our thanks to him and well-wishing for his health. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Helen. Okay. I don't see anything else, so we'll move on to town finances. Projected cash shortfall. Maria?
Sure. Making sure you can hear me.
Yep.
So I am going to turn over the majority of this discussion to Miriam Spencer to talk about the status of finances. But I want to first start by thanking her for her persistence and for making me aware that there was a cash flow issue. So there are probably a variety of reasons for it, and Miriam can talk a little bit about those. But it's something that has caused me to ask staff to look carefully at spending in the short term, and if there are things that we can put off for a month or so we have better confidence in the amount of money that's actually in the bank, that we're going to go ahead and do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miriam and let her explain sort of where we are with this.
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
So you have the memo that I sent for the September 17th scheduled meeting. And then yesterday I asked Courtney to distribute an update. I can really only speak to the portion of the memo that I supplied. So which would be the first part where with the cash bank accounts. Since last week, if you see the update that I asked Courtney to send around yesterday, our cash accounts balance is roughly $2,714,746. And of course, between last week and this week, we've had a payroll vendor warrant cycle. So that's where that went. You'll also notice that the general stabilization fund went up by 40,000. That's because of a funding, a transfer that was supposed to have been done, but it fell through the cracks, and I took care of that last week. So the general went down by 40,000 and the general stabilization went up by 40,000, just to take care of that loose end. So as far as I see, my concern was twofold, and it may have been disproportionate to the circumstances, but it's an awful lot of money and it's not mine. So I just wanted other eyes on it. And I noticed, of course, we all have a gut feeling that our revenue is not what it would have been if COVID hadn't hit. And that's where Jean's numbers came in with the revenue comparisons. And the fact that our tax rate has not yet been set, all of that was promoting my anxiety over the cash flow, and I just wanted to get the ball rolling. Like I said, have other eyes on it and weigh our options moving forward. Any questions? So
Yeah, I have a question. So so money actually got put into the the general stabilization fund, and that money is not available to use for budget shortfall without going through town meeting. Is that correct?
I was counseled yesterday. We're getting some help in to help with setting the tax rate from Eastham. Their assistant town administrator, who's also their finance director, Rich Bienvenu, is coming in to give me a hand with that. And he's been in municipal finance for over 30 years. And I asked him that question specifically, and he said that that is not the case. As long as we backfill the general stabilization fund before the end of the fiscal year, we can internally borrow from it if we need to.
Like short-term borrowing when we know that we're going to
right. That's not where I would go first if we decided to do internal borrowing, but it is a viable option.
Yeah. Okay. So
the other option that he and I discussed, and I had already looked into, was a short-term borrowing note. What's called a revenue anticipatory note, or RAN. And they, right now with the interest rates, the way they are, it's very, very low interest. He talked about one, they just did a borrowing of $3 million for 90 days at 0.7% interest. So between the interest and the fees, he's paying less than $5,000 to borrow that money. I had looked at it. I'd sent an email to Lynn Welsh at Unibank, who is our financial advisor, and asked her essentially the same question, different numbers. I asked her about $2 million borrowed for 2 months. What would that cost us? And she said, at a 0.95% interest rate, between that and the fees, that would cost us about $3,700. So both of them suggested that for peace of mind, that might be the best way to go.
So the other thing I see here, and then you probably can't answer this because you didn't put this together, but maybe you have some insight, is that it looks like our major decreased sources in revenue amount to about $500,000. We don't have any information about incoming revenue, such as like short-term rental revenue or tax revenue. Do we have that information, or?
As a matter of fact, today I just there was a deposit for the August. I'd have to look. Meals tax, and we got $78,000 for that. So that's not in the bottom line on your handout because I updated that yesterday.
Okay. I guess what I'm wondering is how much is the actual budget shortfall, or how much of this is just a cash flow problem that will iron itself out? Like, I imagine there's some budget shortfall. If we're looking at it being 500,000, that's kind of around where Dan was had pointed at as a possibility. But I guess it's hard to know what's incoming from this as far as revenue for the rest of the year. I know, most of the time, a lot of our revenue stops this time of year anyway, besides tax money. So I guess I'm just sort of trying to hash out what this all means. Like, is it just a matter of short-term borrowing and then we might be a little bit short, or are we going to be $500,000 short and have to make it up in the tax rate?
From my perspective, it's short-term. It really is. It's concerning, but it shouldn't be alarming. It's something we can definitely take care of. And I don't believe that it's a budget shortfall as much as just a cash flow problem right now. I think my biggest concern is that because the tax rate isn't set, and there are a number of things that have to happen, as I wrote in the original memo in the tax bill timeline. There are lots of things that have to happen before we start getting revenue in. So, and I knew that process was being slowed down, not intentionally, but it wasn't moving at the pace that I was comfortable with. And so it looked like a train wreck waiting to happen. So I just, like I said, wanted more eyes on it. And we're moving on the tax rate, which is good. And we have options before us to solve the cash flow issue if the two trains do collide.
Okay. Yeah. So
Mr.
one more
Chairman,
question, and that's it. I'll pass it on to the rest of the board, and I won't talk again, hopefully. But one thing I was wondering, and I'm sure you may not have the answer, and I was hoping this would happen last week, and we could ask the accountant, but it says the tax rate is close to being finalized, but accounting discrepancies are slowing the progress. And then there's not much given about what kind of discrepancies he's talking about. So that seems to be a mystery to me.
Right.
What that all means.
Right. And I put that paragraph together, and I since then have started digging into the tax rate process. And one of the issues was a transfer from the ambulance fund that appeared to be short. So the transfer of $500,000 was supposed to be made to help balance the budget. And at the time, at the end of the fiscal year, so June 30th, there was only approximately $429,000 in that account. And so the question of, $71,000 was still unsettled. So since then, I've spoken with, or I've emailed with Dan Hort, who put that budget together. And he said that there was, it was based on the balance of the fund at the time of town meeting, which to me means it was a projection. And so I confirmed that with him because I got the balance at town on September 12th, and we were still roughly $10,000 short. So I followed up with him and asked him, so was there another funding source, or are we just $10,000 short? And he said, well, I must have overestimated. So I'm sure he was projecting that by the time of town meeting, we'd have made up that 70,000.
Okay.
So I do know that, yeah, so $9,800 is a lot better looking than 70,000. So, and I'm going to be talking with Rich Bienvenu and see what the ramifications of being short by that amount are. I suspect they're less than being short by 70,000.
Okay, I think, I can't remember who had their hand up first here. It looked like Ryan, but if I'm wrong.
I think
give
it's
me a
Ryan.
shout. Ryan?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to town administration or Miriam, when can we expect to see the revenue from the short-term rentals?
I would imagine shortly. Usually the rooms and meals tax come in on the same day. And it being the end of the month, I would expect to see it in the next couple of days. I'm not sure, I'm not certain why they are arriving separately.
Okay, and how much revenue is the town currently receiving from previously outstanding taxes?
We're at, Karen told me today that she's looking at uncollected in real estate is about $220,000, and uncollected motor vehicle is $37,000, and that comes to roughly 1% of the budget that's raised and appropriated through taxes. So she's done a pretty good job.
Okay.
And if I may, just understand that there's never a town that ever collects 100%.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's
the collection rate that you have actually is outstanding.
And I don't know, the only other, so when would we have to make a decision if there is a cash shortfall on what we would need to do?
I think in terms of the short-term borrowing, looking at the timeline and understand that that's a common practice, that we should, because it takes 3 or 4 weeks, that we should initiate that now and borrow enough to get us through 60 days when we can anticipate that the revenue from the taxes to start to come in.
So would you be asking for us to approve the application for short-term borrowing today?
We'll look into that, but I don't think that that is a requirement.
Okay. And my only other real concern is, which Mike sorry brought up, the second I read anything about accounting discrepancies, the hair on the back of my head kind of, you know, shoots up. I hope it's just the ambulance fund and the projections and as to the difference in revenue. We all know that the ambulances or that healthcare has been down in this time of COVID. All the hospitals are retrenching as we're speaking. So, you know, people are less willing to go to the hospital, it seems. So, thank you.
What I will say is that, you know, we can, you know, we will examine as carefully as we can what the requirements are for short-term borrowing, you know, and if we needed to bring it back to the board, we would. But looking at, you know, what information that you as a board are normally getting for financial status, it seems to me that it would be appropriate for you to get something that, you know, has revenues at least on, you know, a monthly or quarterly basis, so you can see where we are from, you know, 1 year this year compared to last year, with the understanding that I think it is prudent for us to pay careful attention, not just to what we say we have in the chart of accounts, but what Miriam is keeping track of for what is actually in the bank. And the process that we have for approving purchases and expenditures as our internal process probably needs to be a little bit more sophisticated than just, oh, it was approved at town meeting. So, you know, my intention is that at least on the department level, that some things will need a different level of approval and may need to be set off a little bit longer till we have a real good sense of whether the changes due to COVID are really just short term or something that we need to plan for in a way other than just, you know, approving expenditures before the money's actually in the bank.
Okay, I mean, from running a pretty large seasonal small business, the sequencing of purchases was always critical, and with the cash flow variation of the town, I would imagine that, you know, properly sequencing expenditures would be of a benefit as well. Thank you.
Justina or Helen? I
Yeah,
don't know who.
Justina.
Go ahead, Justina.
She muted herself. Hang on.
there. Yeah, to echo Maria and Ryan's point, having spent 30 years in business and running a business, I was a little surprised. Wait, let me back up. To preface my comments, I think the town of Wellfleet is lucky to have a competent and hardworking treasurer like Miriam Spencer, who stepped up to alert the town of a problem and is working hard to fix it. And our town collector, Karen Murphy, I know they're the backbone of the accounting department, and I'd like to commend them. That said, having had a 30-year background in business, including 2 businesses of my own, I'm used to seeing cash flow statements. It's hard to evaluate financial information in the way the town accountant provided it in a narrative rather than showing us the next 12 months, projected out. How much should we borrow? Wasn't possible. They weren't actionable documents. And I'm glad we're bringing in help from Eastham, the Rich Bienvenu assistant TA, I think it was. I think we need some standard accounting tools that to interpret the data would help everyone. And I think that's what Maria was alluding to. $22 million budget is pretty big. And I would want to see a standard cash flow projection. And I think I don't know if Dan did one. Otherwise, if someone makes a mistake, where is it? It's like whack-a-mole. Where was that mistake? How do we trace it? Something went wrong. Something got projected wrong. And now we have a hiccup in the system. And if we borrow, we should borrow enough. So we probably want to do a cash flow for the next 12 months, cash flow statement, and get the help that we need in for Miriam, our courageous town treasurer.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike? Mike?
I think we lost him, so Janet can
Yeah.
over, but go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so I was going to say what Maria and Ryan both said, which is hit the pause button and let departments know that for, a short time now, not to actively try to use the appropriations they got from town meeting, right? So
we have done that.
Good. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I thank Miriam also, and also our former town accountant who clarified a lot of this for me the day of our last meeting, which was canceled. For not saying the sky is falling, because it isn't, but to carry on what was requested at the beginning of the summer, which was, this is a special situation we're in. It's going to go on for quite some time. And it's going to unfold before us in ways that are not normal. And we need to be, our board needs to be kept abreast of what's happening. So I was grateful for what the documents that we got, which were partly Miriam's and partly Mr. Ferrari's in our last packet, because this is all changing rapidly. And I agree with what Justina said. It's normal to have vicissitudes, you know, anomalies, but this one is more persistent, may become a new normal, and we need to keep abreast of it month by month. So I would like to see that kind of accounting shared with us, and most important, shared with the Finance Committee. Because the Finance Committee needs to be aware of this, even though they're in a sense just an advisory board in a way. They have an official mission, charge to understand completely the town finances and to let us know what they think about them. And in this special time that we're going through, we need to be collaborating with them and the town administrator and the financial administrative staff about all of this more closely than we usually do. So thank you.
Okay, Fred McGee's on here. Let's hear from him. He's on finance. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, hi. I just had to unmute there for a second. I don't have anything super substantive to say, except that when we were asked a few months ago to project from the Finance Committee's perspective on what the impact of COVID would be, we had two perspectives. There'd be a short-term and a long-term potentially. I think a third perspective has emerged over the last few months, which is that we don't return to something that exactly looks like the old normal, which from a budget perspective always sort of implied that we get back into that 2.5% kind of mode where we look at budgets from an incremental perspective. And part of the reason we couldn't project forward was because the numbers weren't in yet. This was June, July, and they're starting to come in now, and we're starting to see a significant, or what appears to be a significant drop off in revenues in certain areas, in excess of 400,000, I think to date, 300 and some at the beach and so on. On a $22 million budget, pick a number. I mean, you could kind of almost do a chart and say, well, if we come in $500,000 short, that's 4% of the budget roughly. And if that is a persistent problem, if COVID doesn't go away next year and we see this kind of drop off, it has real significant budget implications for services and or taxes, right? But I guess from the Finance Committee's perspective, if I can speak for them, is that we not lose that signal for the noise. This cash flow issue appears to be a short-term and easily fixable issue. The longer-term implications of finding $500,000 dropping out of the bottom line and then having to make that up in some way, either by deferring capital requests or raising taxes or whatever, when budgets go up anyway. So really, it's not a real 5%, it's more like a 6 or 7%, because you have to pay more going forward for things that are already in place, or you have to cut them away. And that is, I guess, our chief concern going forward, and what we'll start to talk about in October at our meeting is, what if this is a really longer term prospectus that doesn't return back to what we thought was a normal budget cycle last January? What if if the departmental heads are going to have to rethink their budgets based on some kind of new normal, which is that you don't have as much money to spend, even in the 2.5% framework. That's all I want to say.
So I'll just respond to that quickly. In my perspective is that if you look at our major sources of decrease in revenue, these seem directly related to the sort of beginning of this pandemic. I think, looking out at these don't look like numbers that would necessarily sustain. Like, do we really think that ambulance and transfer station funds, those two funds alone, we'll probably not see those shortfalls again. The transfer station being a result of not having purple bags and just having low dump sticker costs. So a lot of paying for transfer of solid waste that was not being, the town wasn't being compensated for. The beginning of this crisis, there was, people were very hesitant to use ambulance services and stuff like that. Beach, I think we can all agree that the beach won't be the same sort of situation that we had this year going into next year. It's been a relatively successful season as far as it goes. So I don't see this as a, problem that's going to persist as a $500,000 budget shortfall per year. And the other thing I want to take note of is that we have had an incredibly long shoulder season that's been really busy as far as short-term rentals. Restaurants are busy. I've never seen restaurants so busy at this time of year as they were last weekend. And the other thing is property values are clearly going up, and that will have an effect on, the tax revenue that we bring in, depending on what the rate is set at and how much we need. But it does seem to me like this is a short-term issue, and I don't see what aspect of it. It's not like we had a decrease in tourism this year that will persist. In fact, I think if you probably could aggregate the number of people that have come and gone through the town of Wellfleet this summer, my guess, and through the shoulder season, is that it would be higher than normal. So that's just my take. So I think this is really something that we have to think about right now as a short-term issue and get through. Anybody else on this? Not seeing anyone. Fred, did you have your hand up again, or you just have it?
No, I didn't know. I guess I was supposed to lower
Okay.
it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so on to the next item here. We have approval of disclosure. Oh,
Mike?
yes, Ellen? What is it?
Sorry. So here's the thing.
Yes.
Through to Miriam or whoever, when do we need to decide if we want to do the short-term loan thing? Do we have to do it at our next meeting, for example, this coming Tuesday?
We're going to double check with, sorry, Mr. Chairman, we're going to double check on that. I'm not sure that actually comes back to the board. Miriam, what was your understanding of that?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm going to check on that this afternoon. Any short-term borrowing has a 3-week lead time, so we've got the time to find out the answer and still come back to the board if we needed to.
Well, why don't
we're going to double check the process for that. I'm not sure that the charter has a requirement or job responsibilities actually dictate that it come back to the board, but we're going to confirm that to be certain.
Okay, we can always put it on the agenda, and if we don't need to act on it, then we can just move past it. And that way,
That's right.
the situation, at least it's on the agenda and we can take a vote.
We're going to be looking at that decision probably by the end of the week.
Okay. All right. Next subject here, approval of disclosure of financial conflict of interest for Miriam Spencer for the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. I believe we did this last year. Do you have to redo it every year, Miriam?
Yes. Yep, it's an annual thing.
So does anyone have any concerns about this? I know we've already passed it once. If anybody has concerns about it, now's the time to bring them up. Not seeing any. Okay, can we have a motion?
I move, can you hear me?
Yep.
I move that the board has determined that the financial interest of Miriam Spencer is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the town may expect from her as town treasurer. This disclosure is dated September 18th, 2020.
Second.
Have a second? Okay, I'll second. Roll call vote.
Helen, I.
Is everyone muted? Michael, aye.
Let me see.
Ryan, I.
Did we lose
Justina, I.
Justina? Okay. And Janet?
There we go. Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0. Okay, now we have 2020 post-town meeting comments from the moderator. Do we have the moderator on the line? Is Dan here?
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the board. Thank you. I will try to be brief because I know you've got a lot of business to take care of. First off, I want to start by saying that back on June 9th, when town meeting options were being considered, I asked the board at the end of that meeting if they would trust me with putting together a task group to plan our outdoor town meeting or to plan town meeting. We did not know at that time exactly how that would work. I thank the board for putting their trust in me, and I like to think that we put together a task force that assembled a very successful town meeting. It's been my practice in the past to come to the board after the town meeting with a sort of a post-meeting wrap up to see if there's anything by way of lessons learned, anything that we could do better going forward. You have my memo. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over that for the sake of the public. We just made some comments on the warrant. I think the warrant has been put together in a very well-organized fashion. The one suggestion that I would have, and I'd be interested to hear the FinCom's feedback on this as well, is that the financial impact of all articles be estimated when possible. They have been done for some of the major spending articles and borrowing proposals that have come before the town, but I think it would be useful if that information, the impact on the tax rate, was available for everything that the town is asked to vote on, including the omnibus budget and the various capital budgets and enterprise budgets. The other thing that I would like to suggest is that the town council and the moderator both have a chance to review the warrant well ahead of time, so that if we catch things, if I catch things that I think procedurally or in terms of the legality of things going forward, we're able to deal with it before the warrant goes to press. This is talking about the warrant itself, is that I have a chance to review it well in advance along with town council. I think the review this year may have been a little late and may have missed a few things, but happily there was nothing that was that critical as far as I can tell. Just moving on to the rest of the memo that I sent you. The motions booklet, I think, it was crucial this year, obviously, but I think it really has made the process of town meeting both more transparent to the voters and a lot smoother. And the way we made the motions this year, I think, was very successful in terms of having the chair and the vice chair make and second all the motions, unless there was a good reason for another proponent to make the motions in their place. And I'd like to see that practice continue. I'd like to see us continue to use the motions booklet and make the motions in the form that we don't have to go ahead with the actual reading of each of the motions. Again, I think the voters appreciate that. I think it was very successful. Finally, just in terms of the practicalities, I'm not at all sure that by the time we come to next spring, we're going to be in a position that we're comfortable going back indoors for a town meeting. And with that in mind, I asked the task force to come together for one more meeting. We did a post meeting after action review, if you will. We went over lessons learned, what we could do better, what went well. I did not see everything that was going on, so I got some really good feedback. And should we need to do this again, I think we have a very good template from which to work. I think it would take a lot less work on the part of staff next year to put this together. And the other thing that I'd like to bring to the board's attention is the feedback that I've gotten on how happy people were with the Saturday town meeting. So I'd like the board to basically solicit input from the voters at large to see how they would feel about continuing to do meetings on Saturday, whether we're back in the gymnasium or we continue to have to find another venue. I think it was I think there was a lot to be said for people not becoming fatigued. If once we're out of the woods with COVID, we're hoping to do childcare, and I think that would be easier to put together on a Saturday. I think we might attract a younger population if we do it regularly on a Saturday. I think the older population in town finds it easier to come to a daytime meeting than nighttime meeting. So that's something that I'd like to see the board think about moving forward. That's all I have, and we'd be happy to. I think the task force. I just want to give one more shout out to the members of the town staff who really stepped up and did what needed to be done. Almost everything, most of the good ideas about town meeting did not come from me. They came from the fire department, from the DPW, from our health agent, from our community service director, from the rec department. A lot of good input that we had working together, and I'm really pleased with the collaboration that all of town staff put together to make the meeting happen. So with that, any suggestions from the select board to the planning task force going forward would be very helpful. Thank you.
Helen?
Yeah, quick question. If Courtney could unmute all of us to the four of you. I heard from a lot of people on the day and subsequently in a number of different ways, but a lot of people, to confirm what Danny said, how much people liked it being during the day. And we got through, what was it, 4 hours, and we didn't have to break, we didn't have to go to another day. I'd like to ask the four of you what you've heard so far, just quickly.
I've heard both, and I've heard that a lot of the people who own businesses, we are a tourist industry, and a lot of businesses are open. Saturday's their main day, or Sundays. So that was the only negative thing I heard, is just the concern for having to go to work on a weekend.
I would say the same thing. That the people that attended town meeting enjoyed it. The concern is about the people who were not able to attend the town meeting because of work schedules or working families, and of course the childcare issue, which but the concern is definitely the people that it's not a good time for. We don't want to exclude a minority for the sake of the majority.
Justina?
Yeah, I heard the same thing. I think it was a very good format. I think that people enjoyed, the sunshine and so forth, and having it be outdoors, and it was COVID safe. But I think it was best for people who don't have jobs and businesses and responsibilities that earn them a living. Is what
Can I make one comment about that? So I agree with that, but and I heard that too. And then I remembered, usually we have our town meeting at the end of April, and businesses are opening up. PJ's is open already, and they're in the process of getting into full swing. But we had our town meeting in full season, really, because the middle of September, or September 12th, especially this year, is full season. So I'm putting that into my thoughts about it. Thank you. I just wanted to hear from the rest of you about it so that we could all hear it from each other.
Yeah, well, the question was, what did we hear?
Yes, exactly.
That it was hard for people who
yes,
work to come.
Business, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Kathleen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Silverman. Since we've been talking about COVID-related finances, how much did this particular town meeting cost the town of Wellfleet? And what is an ordinary expense pre-COVID on a town meeting?
I'm afraid that that's not an answer I can give you, Kathleen. The moderator's budget is about $200 for salary and about another $200 for expenses. So all of those costs came out of either the DPW or to the administrative office. I know that the cost of the tent rental was give or take, I want to say between $5,000 or $6,000. I think the cost of the sound technicians, I believe that was under $1,000. Other costs than that, there may have been some overtime costs for the fire department staff who was there. I want to say it was probably short of $8,000. That's just a rough estimate based on what I know the costs were. I think I don't know if Suzanne's contract, whether she had to contract separately for those porta potties for the day, but it was not, I'll say $8,000 to $10,000 at the most. That's clearly higher than what it normally costs us for town meeting. The bulk of that was for the rental of the tent, and we did have some questions in the wrap up as to whether the tent would be necessary, or we'd have to do it again in the spring. And certainly the police department and Suzanne, I'm sorry, the fire department, Chief Pauly and Captain Capello and Suzanne from the senior center, in this case, felt that it was important to be able to provide shelter from the sun for the seniors who needed it. So I don't know what the normal cost of town meeting. I think we basically pay for the janitorial staff at the school to work after hours. I believe those are the only extra costs that we have over the printing and so forth that we'd have to do every year. So that's my best guess on that.
Thank you, Danny. Mr. Chair, I just have two brief comments that tie in with what the board has been saying. I heard from a lot of my restaurant friends who could not attend town meeting because of work, and they were very disappointed not to get there. So it was a time of year that this particular meeting had to go on where we're still busy. And in addition, I heard from many people that were disappointed, and I offer this comment not as a criticism, just as a comment that's been coming to me since town meeting. They were disappointed that our new town administrator, Maria Broadbent, wasn't introduced either by you, Mr. Chair, to the voters or by the moderator, and given at least a minute or 2 minutes to have said hello to her new town of Wellfleet. So those are my two comments that I've heard from the general public. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I did introduce Maria. I did not give her she stood up, I know, and waved to everybody. I did not.
Yeah, we remember that. Yeah.
I did not give her the opportunity to speak. For that, I apologize.
I'd just like to also point out that no matter what time and what day of the week town meeting is, it always interferes with a broad sector of voters. Weekday nights, there's a lot of tradespeople work early in the morning, or waitresses who work in the evening that can't make it to those meetings. If you have children, difficulty finding daycare at night when a meeting goes till 10 o'clock. So just practically speaking, unless we make town meeting a holiday, it's pretty difficult to make it work for everyone. I think in the spring, during the daytime on a Saturday, before restaurants are in full swing, is not necessarily a bad time to do it. People who want to attend town meeting, if you are on a lunch shift. It's a little different than missing a dinner shift. Everybody has to sort of make adjustments is I guess what I'm saying, if they want to engage in their civic duty. And it's not always easy. And I've had many times where it's been impossible for me to make town meeting work for me on its normal scheduled time. So no perfect answers. So I just want to throw that out there. Do I have anyone else? Ryan, do you still have your hand up, or is it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So the first is a question through you to Dan. So this spring's annual town meeting, town meeting time is set in the charter. Would the spring town meeting have to comply with the charter as to the time that would have to take place, or if we are still in the current health emergency, could the time be changed?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I believe, I don't have the charter in front of me, but I believe the wording of the charter does give the town, gives the select board latitude in terms of setting the date. I believe that the wording is something to the effect of the fourth Monday in April or any other date chosen by the select board. The same would be with the time. The time is set by bylaw. We just amended that bylaw to say that the starting time was 6 p.m., but I believe the wording also included the phrase or other time as determined by the select board. So our ability to move it from its normal date this spring to a later date was because we have that proviso in the charter that the select board can choose another date, and happily we have that option. There were towns that had to have it in the spring because they did not have that same latitude. Whoever wrote our charter wisely did allow some latitude in there.
Okay. And then I have two suggestions. One is, and this has happened in a number of town meetings in the past. I was surprised that somebody actually didn't do it in this town meeting, where people that are not physically able to be present have written a letter and have had somebody go up to the microphone with their letter and read it for them, so that we can at least hear from them. I would encourage to have some way of making a point of emphasis during the community outreach in preparation of the annual town meeting, as we're still dealing with COVID. The second is for town staff to be generally located in about the same location with a microphone provided for them at that location, because there were a couple times during the meeting where the town staff had to make the trek back and forth. I think Rich Polly did it a number of times. But at the same time, they would need to be somewhere visible to the body of the town, the body of the town meeting. Those are my two suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curley. I think that's helpful.
Okay, if that's it. I did have one suggestion, and I do think that the lecterns proved to be pretty useful. I'm not sure if we can it seemed to be faster if people who had a lot to say could get up to the lectern, or if they were going to speak multiple times, rather than the person carrying the mic back and forth through that expanse of ball field. If the lecterns could be more widely used, I think it would be beneficial, and people would be able to potentially line up with a 6-foot separation, because there was plenty of space to do that. So having seen that play out, it seems to me like our traditional way of having people come to the microphone and comment could be accommodated through the same means, just with a social distanced line, similar to any grocery store, to something like that, the way people line up in that respect with a marked 6-foot spacing. And that might speed up the process rather than waiting for the microphone carriers to get to whoever maybe put their hand up first, so that's all.
Yeah, if I could respond, Mr. Chair, just two things. That was the time lag dealing with the microphone wranglers was one of the things that we reviewed during our after action review. Clearly, they needed to be better placed and perhaps a little better, briefed on exactly how they should be placed before the meeting. That was something that kind of fell through the cracks. As far as using the lecterns, we modeled this on the Orleans Town meeting, which had happened in the spring, and the intent of using the remote mics rather than a one lectern or a couple of lecterns was the ability to sanitize the microphones in between speakers, and that's something that maybe you were not aware of was being done by the folks handling the mics. Is in between each speaker they would do a sanitation procedure, and ideally we weren't using the same microphone twice in a row. As far as I know, we did not. That was why we went with that model. If we went with a single lectern or dual lecterns with an individual microphone, the concern was, that we'd have to have some sort of a sanitation procedure between them. And I'm not that could be done. Certainly something we can think about. The way we did it was based on a successful operation that Orleans had carried out. Where the wranglers were placed was clearly not ideal, and it was a little bit more time.
I would just think that the wranglers, instead of moving the microphone around, could just swap the microphone and sanitize it, place the microphone on there for the next speaker, and have it go that way. So you could still swap microphones out, but not have to move 400 feet to do it,
Yeah, that's not a bad suggestion, Mr. Master. We'll definitely consider that next year.
Mike Travato?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to let you know I have the town charter in front of me here, and it says the annual town meeting shall convene annually on the fourth Monday in April each year, unless otherwise provided by bylaw or by action of the select board.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we can move on to the next subject. Thank you, Dan, for all the suggestions and carrying out a successful town meeting.
Thank you for the support.
Okay, and on to the next thing. We have Animal Control Memorandum of Understanding from the Police Chief. Chief Hurley on here.
Yep, I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so this is just a new agreement for, is it the same animal control officer or a new animal control officer?
No, this is, we still have Des Keogh, who's our animal control officer here.
Okay. Oh, this is for the town of Eastham to share?
Yep,
Okay.
This was done through administration, both through our office in Eastham, and I believe, and Mike Travato can verify, was vetted by council. And it's just an intermunicipal agreement on the services between the two towns.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, a couple questions. Through you to Mike, to Chief Hurley. So Officer Keogh would be doing this in addition to his regular police department duties, correct?
Yes, he would be available both for Wellfleet and Eastham to deal with animal control issues.
No, that wasn't, I'm sorry. He's also a regular police officer, or is this the only function he has within the department?
I mean, for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, animal control issues is his primary function. If that need or service is not needed in either Wellfleet or Eastham, then he is available to help our full-time staff. But he is not a full-time police officer. He's a reserve officer.
Thank you. My second question. So in the past, Select Board used to get at least once a year, we'd get a document that had, all the different kinds of calls that the department has to respond to. Numbers, and included in those would be calls about animals. And this sounds like it's good. I'm sure you guys thought about it, and it's going to save us some money. I would assume. Is that true? That's part of the question?
In the intermunicipal agreement, Eastham will be paying us $30,000 annually for this service.
Okay, so Officer Keogh's already got a set salary from us.
Yes.
And we would be covering less of it, or there would simply be more paid to Officer Keogh?
Nope, this would just, I mean, he's an employee of ours paid through the town of Wellfleet. They are just paying for the services, which to track the money back, I guess would go back to the general fund or the town of Wellfleet.
Okay, so we would pay what we were paying him normally, and then we'd get $30,000. Fine, it's all good. I'm just trying to understand it. So the other thing is, I would really like to know how many animal calls we had last year and how many animal calls Eastham had. And if this is manageable, perhaps you can address that now. Perhaps you can say, it's never so much that Officer Keogh couldn't answer calls for Wellfleet, given that they're spread out over time. Can you give me some sense of that, please?
Yep, in 2019, just internally within Wellfleet in our department, he responded to over 400 calls, ranging from dog bites to animal complaints to barn inspections. Eastham, they had their shifts doing it, so I do not know how they classified their animal calls or if they kept track of them. In 2020, to date, we're at 350 calls for Wellfleet. I've spoken with Des this spring when this agreement was being drafted and put together. And, again, at the moment, he is confident that this is a doable item. If you remember in the past, we used to have shared services with Truro. So we have done this in the past. So it's, it could be a trial for a year. And if it doesn't work, then both parties can look at possibly exiting the agreement. So it's hard to tell. I do know animal calls are up this year. Speaking with Des, because people are home. I mean, people were home from March through June. There was a lot of interactions with animals, and dog bites are substantially up this year. So this may be just an anomaly this year of our calls, but it'll be a work in progress as it was with Truro. We shared it then.
So we would get a check-in after, let's say, a probationary year on this, because the contract has the term going for no longer than 3 years. But could we request in the motion that we get a check-in after a year? Because I really care about the animals a lot, as some of us know.
Well, on page 2, under number 3, budget and compensation in the agreement, the town of Eastham shall pay Wellfleet $30,000 annually, payment due on or about July 15th of each year. A little different this year because Eastham did not have their town meeting until this past Saturday.
So could we put in the motion that there would be a review prior to that, before we went into a new year with them? In other words, summer 2021, let's say the select board meeting before that July 15th deposit. And I'm sorry I asked that, but I had read the memo, the MOU, but it seemed to me an important thing to have out there during the meeting verbally. So I wasn't trying to. Anyway, the point is, can we include having a review of this in a year?
Helen,
does that feel good to everybody?
Yeah, could we do it for a 1-year probationary period?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, why not?
Mr. Chair, can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Isn't it obvious and a given that both police chiefs or department heads at that time would review the position? Maybe Chief Hurley can answer that.
Yeah, no, my recommendation would be is, we would need to get through, especially a full summer season cycle. Des sporadically has been working and helping Eastham on certain things already just to kind of transition this. So, I'm working very closely with the Eastham chief. And, we will make this work. And I think if it got to a point where it was not doable due to the call volume, and understand, he's only on 40 hours a week between the two towns. The regular shifts will continue to handle animal issues in each respective community. So this is not 100% on Officer Keough for every single animal call.
Also, it does say here in the terms, it says this agreement is effective July 1st, 2020 and will continue in effect no longer than 3 years or until one of the parties hereto provides notice of at least 4 months prior to the start of a new fiscal year. They do not intend to participate in this agreement for the upcoming fiscal year. Notice of termination. So it's already in there, Helen. The town we can terminate it. So I don't think we have.
Yeah, through you.
Yes.
What I wanted in there was, of course, Janet, you're right. The two departments would be assessing this all along. But to tag on to what Chief Hurley said, the summer season, when there are more dogs and more people out and so on and so forth, more people, right, is really going to be the litmus test. So maybe we should have a check-in about this in our minds, right? Sometime at the end of the summer. And, it's unfortunate that the next deposit of money would come before that, but we can work that out later. I just wanted to bring that up to see if this works. If it works for our only registered animal control officer, that's correct, right, Chief Hurley? Officer Keough is the only person who's gone through all the training and has been certified and registered as an official state animal control officer. There's nobody else, right?
Nope, that's correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
I want to move on to the other board members just so we can kind of get through this and we can make a motion. All three board members have their hand up. Ryan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple questions and then a comment or two comments. One is, who is responsible for providing the vehicle gas and service and maintenance?
Currently, right now, that is us. In the event that, because we're having a small vehicle issue with ours being voted down at town meeting, that Eastham has also agreed, if needed, to supply a vehicle for this position.
Okay. Then are we providing the equipment as well?
For the most part, we've had the equipment on board. We have the kennel built into our new station here. So most of the equipment we already have. The town of Eastham is providing a yearly $12,000 service to the Brewster, I believe it's Rescue League, to have unlimited veterinary and boarding services, which we do not have for the town of Wellfleet.
Okay, and then the memorandum says that the animal control officer will report to both chiefs. Are you the ultimate supervisor?
You could say that, yes. I will be working with the Eastham police chief if there are concerns in Eastham or something arises there. He will get in touch with me, but yes, I would be the more direct supervisor, being our employee and my employee.
Okay. And then my two comments. The first is when I saw this, I wrote yes on it with a big exclamation mark. I think it's a good way to save the town a little bit of money and at the same time provide specialized services to both towns. One of my concerns is that the agreement covers 3 years or up to 3 years. And it's at a flat $30,000 per year. there are no escalators for compensating for annual raises to the animal control officer. How much are the annual raises currently?
Right now, because the contract is up June 30th of 2021, I wouldn't have that information because they'll be going into negotiations.
Okay, but how about in years prior? How much has the raise typically been?
It's been whatever has been negotiated, 2%, 3%, depending on what was done through the town negotiations.
So, I mean, that would basically add between $600 to $900 per year to the agreement if we did an escalator based on annual raises. I think for a 3-year trial period, it's fine. But if this becomes a long-term thing, I would want the compensation to be partially pegged to the officer's salary. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just a quick comment. This intermunicipal service agreement was done between administration. I'm trying to be here helpful to answer these questions within this, but my job will be managing the position and working with Eastham to make this happen. So, why it's $30,000 for 3 years, that's, how the agreement was drafted up. So
Justina?
Yeah, I want to echo what Chief Hurley said. It's courteous of him to cover the select board off, but this is a contract on Chief Hurley's staff. And it's it's a memo with the town of Eastham signed by the town administrator who's responsible for supervising staff. I think it's been courteous to cover off the select board, but we don't sign the contract. And it is Chief Hurley's jurisdiction to administrate it, reporting to Maria Broadbent, who signs it. And there is a term clause, as Mikey pointed out, to Helen's concerns that if there's issues, we're not locked in. So I think this is a great contract. It was great Chief Hurley brought it before us, and I support it, but it doesn't really fall, the day-to-day administration of it doesn't really fall the select board under charter.
Okay, can we have a motion?
Mike, I'm sorry, I have to correct that. Mike?
Correct what?
Yeah, respectfully, Justina, the wording of this allows us to delegate to the town administrator the ability to sign this, but it is a contract having to do with money, by the way. And the select board does have to approve contracts. And you remember with the water commissioners that you were the chair of, the water commissioners would figure all that out and set it up and work out the finances. But ultimately, the select board had to sign the contracts.
We're
So
not
in fact,
signatories of this.
anyway, I just wanted to
To
put that
approve
out.
it, which is the motion. So if we make the motion to approve it, then that's it. That's approval.
Yeah, that's all we have to do if we
Right,
want
so
to.
that's why I
Right,
asked
that's
for a
what I'm
motion.
saying.
Can we have a
But we
motion?
have, you want me to make the motion?
I move to
I move-
approve the memorandum of understanding between Eastham and Wellfleet for an animal control officer and authorize the town administrator to sign it.
Second,
Roll call vote.
Helen,
Janet, I.
Justina?
Justina, I, sorry.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, and on to the next, Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates update. Lily Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity on today to update you as to some of the relevant agenda items the Assembly has been dealing with, and also some of the relevant topics that we've been updated with. I have one request, which I'll start off with, and perhaps at the end you could talk about that. I introduced a resolution and letter to the governor, which did pass in the Assembly, and it was to ask the governor to release the funds designated in the IT bond bill for Barnstable County projects. This is typical where a bill gets passed, and if it's a bond bill, then there typically is advocacy on behalf of the towns, the various committees, and the county to have the monies released. So not only in the Assembly did we pass this, and what was it supported by all of the 15 towns, it was also brought up that we should bring this back to our select boards and any relevant committees in our towns and ask that also you support this. This letter going to the governor from the Assembly is in your packets, slightly modified, and so that's appropriate for you. It covers people in our community, from school children to adults, people from working from home, telemedicine visits, emergency services, the elderly, and also it would help with the ability of local government to meet and govern. And the bill includes for Wellfleet a strategic extension of Open Cape fiber backbone in Wellfleet. It would also have funding for not less than $100,000 for the Cape Cod Community College to equip students in need with technology necessary to participate in remote learning. And also it would help with a study that the Cape Cod Commission could do that would help us to have a better understanding and understand where we could target funds for broadband and even cell phone communication. So I think this would be very helpful if you see fit to also write this letter and send it to the governor. I would like to also bring to your attention that it so happened at the same date that this was voted on. It was just a coincidence. Open Cape did come before the Assembly. And one of the things that that in my questioning to him was revealed is that he said that we don't have a committee in Wellfleet, and what if this money is released and he were to build out the backbone, he would think it would be important to work with somebody or a team of people in our town. So I urge you to take this up at another meeting, discuss it, see if there's a committee that a town committee perhaps you'd like to form, or a task force, or whatever, to address this proactively, even a campaign. There's a lot that could actually be done ahead of time so that we're prepared, so this money could be used effectively in our town and very targeted. So I'd like to go on to talk about some of the presentations we've had. I put links in for 2 presentations that I thought might be really interesting for you. One is on solid waste management and recycling, and I thought it was fascinating, especially with the issues that we'll have to deal with in the near future. And also there was an update on our test center, our septic test center that the county funds. In my questioning there, and also subsequent calls with the county administrator, is my understanding that the county is working with the people, some people in Wellfleet, on an innovative septic system at the Lawrence Road development. And this is some of the research that has been going on for years at this test center. And hopefully Wellfleet will benefit as a result of that. And I think some of the people on this call later on might even be able to elucidate you on that topic. I would also like to bring to the attention of the board as well as the public that at their next meeting, which will be on the first Wednesday of the month, October 7th at 4 o'clock. And again, too, of course, we meet via Zoom. The meeting materials are online. You can just Google Assembly of Delegates, Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates. There's also a link here to a resolution that's been put forward and was put forward at the last meeting. This is Resolution 20-06. It's a resolution for public participation in Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates meetings and hearings guide. This is a time where the Assembly delegates will be able to make comments prior to voting on this resolution. And I know that everyone's aware of some of the newspaper articles, etc., about the Assembly of Delegates in one of the meetings. And this is where I and other delegates will be able to make our comments at the discretion, of course, of the speaker. I encourage the public to attend this meeting. I encourage any of the select board members who would like to as well. And the proper place to make comments about this resolution is under public comments before the assembly convenes. It is not like the select board meetings where when the topic comes up, members from the public can talk about it. After the assembly convenes, the public, unless there is a special discretion given, typically the public does not speak at that time. The public would have the opportunity at public comments. So if anybody has any questions or about the assembly workings, about this particular resolution, I'm always open and available if you want to reach out to me. I did also want to draw attention to a presentation that was given by the Cape Cod Municipal Policy Academy Director, Peter Carnes, about the Police Academy. And, you know, we were updated about this. I know this is in the news. This is top of mind for every single town in Barnstable County, if not throughout this country. And I think it's important to just breeze through it, take a look at what he has to say. I'm open to comments. The Assembly of Delegates does vote on the money that funds the Police Academy. And I took very seriously public comments that were made at that particular meeting, and I did follow up with it with through the Speaker of the Assembly, and we did receive feedback from Peter Carnes that the Police Academy does use Independence House advocates and the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office representatives to assist with the presentation of domestic violence curriculum at the Academy. I did want to bring to your attention that I have had a couple of conversations with the county administrator, and there are plans for the AmeriCorps to volunteers to work on the Herring River project. They're working very closely on that and very diligently. I'll keep you updated on that. And also, the county administrator is very committed to working with Wellfleet if you so choose to want the county's staff to help or to run the dredge as we move forward. If there are any further questions from the board, I'd be glad to answer your questions. And again, I hope you vote to send this letter off. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Looks like Janet's got her hand up. Go ahead, Janet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Mike Travato listening still? I know he's there. So Lily was talking about getting a committee together. I want everyone to know that Mike Travato has been working with a couple other people, I think Heather Doyle, on getting our IT going and looking into everything. So Mike, do you feel you need help? Do you need a committee, or you have it under control?
Yeah, another committee. That's good. Yeah, we have just preliminary discussions regarding this and trying to get something a little more formulated before we put it to a committee. But yeah, certainly, I think at this point, certainly warrants it.
Yeah, good. And then what was the last thing Lily said I wanted to comment on that I knew the answer to?
The dredge.
Oh, yeah, the dredging. At this point, the Army Corps of Engineer and Cashman Company will be working on the dredging rather than our town doing it.
Right, I also may add that the county dredge is not the proper dredge equipment.
Right.
They don't have the proper dredge equipment for this particular project.
Yeah.
No, the county administrator full well recognizes that as well as I do. But they said that before the COVID-19 situation, they were talking to the town about using staff, county staff, to run the dredge that we purchased. Again, it's your call, but I'm just bringing it to your attention that the lines of communication are open, and he's willing to work with you if that is your choice.
Yeah, not at this point. And not this year, if things go as we expect, which I'll give an update on dredging at the end. But no, I think we're having, is it Cashman, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we haven't, that Cashman is doing the federal portion of the channel. We haven't put ours out to bid yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's it for me.
Ryan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So if we're talking about a different committee, I would say rather than creating a different committee, that we should revise the charge of the Cable Advisory Committee, which already is fairly well informed on internet connection issues in the town of Wellfleet. That way we don't have to, create and recruit members for another committee, and the members of that committee are already familiar with the work. So Lily's also asking us to move on this letter. So I don't have any issue, moving on it. I am very skeptical of Open Cape. We've always been, I mean, to me, Open Cape as a project has failed already. Their business model has proven to be unworkable, where they construct the middle mile and have to have another company construct the last mile, which is the actual connections off of the trunk to the houses. And to date, no company has really provided that service of connecting the last mile. So, Open Cape installed all this middle mile, but there's very few customers actually connected to it. Most of them are actually municipalities or something like Woods Hole, which, and other areas where the same business model has been employed around the country have had the same issue happen, where there's no provider that comes before anybody that actually provides the last mile of connecting the network to actual homes and businesses. But I do support asking for the release of the funds from the bond bill. Thank you.
I would agree with Ryan.
Yeah, Mike, I don't disagree with, with anything that Ryan said. From our two presentations by Open Cape, I'm hopeful that they're reorienting themselves. It seems like they're doing more targeted work and with success in some of the towns. Falmouth is an example, Provincetown is another, and I'm just hopeful. The other thing that Steve Johnson also made a promise to is if there is a connection that goes to private homes, let's say on Ocean View Drive, and runs by a beach, he will, for free, connect to the beach. So I think that's something that, I've talked with Heather about that as well, because I know she has an interest in this, and she and several other people in the town have had an interest, and I have been following this on the county level for a number of years. So I do think hold him to it.
Okay, Justina?
Just wanted to quickly thank Lily for all the hard work that she's put in her position and the thoroughness of the documentation and coming before us. I support the letter. I know it's a complex issue, but I think it's the best course of action to do the letter.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the letter in support of IT bond bill proposed resolution 2005 as drafted by Lily Green and authorize the board to sign it.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Justina, aye.
I'm just rereading it quickly to see if it specifically mentions. I'm quickly rereading the letter.
Okay, we'll hold for you for a second.
If you're looking for a specific mention about Wellfleet, there is one.
No, about Open Cape.
Open Cape is $1.7 million in funds allocated to Open Cape internet connectivity issues.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that we need the release of funds, but I don't want to be tied to one company.
Yeah, the problem is that the bill specifies that, Janet.
Really? All
Yeah.
right.
I mean, this has already passed at the state level. Is that correct, Lily?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep.
The House
So
signed by the
she's asking to advocate for a timely release of the funds that have already been allocated by the state.
Yeah. All right, then I'll say yes, I'm in agreement. I approve.
Okay. Do we have?
Ryan, aye.
Ryan, aye. Justina, did you vote?
Justina, aye.
Michael, aye. And there's Helen. Okay, so that's 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you,
Thank you,
Lily.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are on to approval of request for proposals for 95 Lawrence Road housing project.
Elaine and Mike
here?
Drogato.
Elaine is here.
Yep.
Elaine, do you want to speak on this first?
Sure, thank you. And I hope, along with Mike Trogato, who's on, and Gary Sorkin, I would encourage them to join in as needed. On behalf of the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force, I'm happy to bring you back the RFP, the current version of the RFP. We met with the select board on May 5th and had a pretty thorough working session going through the RFP with you. Since then, we made some adjustments based on our work session with you. The RFP has since gone to town council and has been reviewed and revised in a few sections by town council. And then it came back to the task force and our consultant, Laura Schufelt, for a final look at it. And that's what you have in your packet today. I think in its current form, you can have confidence it's a solid document. It meets all the requirements of an RFP. The schedule, the ideal schedule we had hoped was after a town meeting in the spring, it would get your approval and then it would go out, be issued by the town. Of course, with the delay in town meeting and other issues caused by COVID, we have missed the deadline to basically get it out in time for developers to seek this year's funding. So we now have a situation where the ideal time to send it out is going to be late February, early March. And even though that feels like a negative in many ways, I think we may have a more positive situation on our hands. We know right now that the water issue, we can keep moving forward based on the town meeting vote and the ballot. The big issue now is wastewater. As you know, we had a grant from the Cape Cod Commission to study wastewater systems for 95 Lawrence Road, and that focused on innovative and alternative systems and also larger treatment systems. It's my understanding that the select board has asked the Wastewater Committee for a recommendation, and we are planning to meet with the Wastewater Committee tomorrow, I believe, but at present, I don't know what we don't know what the recommendation is. So I think it's fairly obvious that you might not want to approve the proposal at this point because there may be some adjustment to the wastewater issue. But this is the town's project. It will be the town that's issuing the RFP. So we want to make sure you're comfortable, that any questions you may have are answered, and be happy to hear your thoughts about it now.
Well, I'm actually happy that this got delayed for the one reason that the septic issue is definitely going to be an issue that has to be included in the RFP, whatever it may be, I think, right, Elaine? And then the other reason is that, I know that housing projects, and hopefully this will be relieved next year, but there has not been much competition for bidding on these projects, and with the boom that's going on right now and the increase in construction materials, we might wind up getting a better project out of it, having waited for whatever just happened or is happening right now to sort of feather out and land where it may. But right now, construction is a little bit crazy. So for those two reasons, I think we might be better off that we did miss that original deadline. That's really all I have to say about it right now. Ryan had his hand up first, I think.
Yes. So there's two things I would like to address. One is obviously the wastewater. Until that is locked down, a developer is going to be very leery about bidding on this project because it's basically a huge unknown what they may be required to do. I think that, I have a clear preference on what I would want to see there. I've seen the figures. I think the select board should try to give direction at this point to make it clear as to what the best path forward is going to be in terms of the septic, so that we don't end up holding up this project by getting it stuck in committees for a while. And then the other is for the RFP that we were provided, it doesn't include all the attachments, which are elements of the RFP. I've been provided with most of them by town staff and Elaine since. One that I understand is still in the process of being developed, and that is the draft land disposition agreement and draft ground lease. We can't really approve the RFP without having a draft before us, because the select board is the one that holds the land. You know, it's land that the select board holds for the town of Wellfleet. And we can't approve a disposition of town land without having something that describes that disposition. So, thank you.
If I can address that, Mr. Chair. The draft land disposition agreement and the draft ground lease are both in the process of being drafted by legal counsel, by our counsel. Not sure the timeline on that. They're definitely attachments that are designed as documents to at least give the developer a sense as to what they can look forward to as far as what their expectations are relative to the agreements, obviously both on the lease and on the land disposition. I think that the spirit of what's being intended here by the task force is to get approval of the select board of the body content of the RFP at this time. Understanding that that these legal documents aren't going to go anywhere until they get final select board approval. And the same thing with the wastewater issue. Just to give you a little bit of an update, subsequent to that presentation by On-Site Engineering to the board of their wastewater analysis, we've asked them to send us a proposal to give us also additional information, much of which was requested at that select board meeting, about nitrogen loading impacts analysis, as well as asking them to give us some assistance with shaping out the final language in that wastewater component so that it's fully understandable to the developer. So depending on what direction the town decides it wants to take with the wastewater treatment at the site, then those components can be finalized. And they're, again, separately as attachments. So certainly would hope that with all the review, and as Elaine mentioned, the review process for this with this board started, was it May you said, Elaine? It was a while ago. We really hope that the body content of this can be approved so that we could just take those two components, the legal documents and the direction for the developer on the wastewater separately, and can just address those so we could, then be ready to move forward at the appropriate time to put the RFP out on the street.
So the motion that we were provided says indirect town staff to issue it following Massachusetts procurement laws. So you're asking to release RFP out for bid. That's incomplete. I don't have any issue of approving it as a draft, but as it is right now, it's incomplete.
So if you could approve it contingent upon those components still being drafted, then that would be a big help here, because we won't have to go through this a third time with the whole body content of this. This
Right.
is
I
not,
think that would be smart. And
not
then-
going on the street without those components being nailed down.
Okay, I think that would be smart. And at the same time, as I was saying, I would really like to move forward quickly on the septic issues so that we, get done. Thank you.
Anyone for a motion?
Justina's not.
Mike?
Yep, hang on. He muted. 1 second.
Now she's muted.
No, Mike is on.
Hi. Yeah, Justina. Justina?
Sorry, they hadn't sent me the unmute prompt.
Yeah,
think
I needed to, sorry.
Yeah, I want to clarify. I thought that the on-site engineering presentation was quite thorough and far along. So I think we shouldn't broad stroke it as, you know, we aren't anywhere there. And I'm sure they'll continue to work on it and fine tune it. And engineering specs do take time. I think that the proposal in front of us is very, very thorough, has been vetted, and would be a big help to the working group. I'm just piggybacking on what Mike said. If we can help it move along by giving approval contingent on those two components that have been mentioned, and then we can approve those. But I don't want the baby thrown out with the bathwater on the engineering spec, because it was, you know, it was a good solid piece of work. And I think certainly everybody's objections to it can get answered, but I really want to commend this Lawrence Road working group. I was very impressed by this proposal. I think we've come a long way in a short period of time, and this is a big moment for Wellfleet. Frankly, I expected this to take years. I'm impressed, and I hope we can vote for it today.
Helen?
Hi there. So I'm excited that the Wastewater Committee is going to meet tomorrow on this. And what some of you may remember clearly is there are three different options for the extent of wastewater, the amount of wastewater, and the different lots that could be hooked up to this septic waste system. And this is a huge component of this RFP. And I'm not sure, given that the Wastewater Committee is meeting tomorrow, and I will be going to that, very excited to hear what they have to say, that we shouldn't simply wait until this coming Tuesday. I don't want to hold it up either. So I agree with Justina. I'm happy about the fact that it's moving along, but approving something as a draft is not what you need for an RFP. And I agree with Ryan, and I'm a little disturbed that Ryan, for example, found additional data. You know, there were additional documents that we didn't get in this packet, which happens sometimes. And I would like to see those. I feel we've done the most thorough discussion on this that we need to do, and we might simply touch base with it after hearing what the Wastewater Committee recommends in terms of the scope, the amount of properties that they're looking to include in this septic system, which is very much part of the RFP, because it has every good connection to the 208 plan and our compliance with it. So I think we should wait at least until Tuesday on this. We don't have to go over the whole thing again.
You don't have a meeting on Tuesday, Helen. Your next
Right.
meeting is the 13th. It's the second Tuesday of the month. Next Tuesday is
Okay.
only the 1st.
Okay, so to wait until the 13th, because this is important. We haven't all seen the same data. And putting out an RFP that isn't complete isn't a good idea, and I'm not even sure it's legal. So we need to look at what that is before we can vote on it. It could be something quite different in terms of just the septic waste, depending on what the Wastewater Committee comes up with. Thank you.
Wasn't my sorry, Mike. Wasn't my understanding we're gonna have it sent out? It's my understanding we're voting on what we're comfortable with, so they can move forward and give it to council and so forth. Like
Yeah.
what we're not comfortable with right now is the septic part and the whatever Ryan said about the leases on the land that Mike is having looked at. Mike Travato's having looked at legally, and then the septic, the wastewater component, I guess, is going to get, you know, a thorough once over, but there's a great deal of this proposal that everybody's comfortable with. And so I believe, and Elaine will correct me if I'm wrong, I thought what I heard is that it would be helpful to this hardworking group if we green-lighted the document before us as a working document, but said contingent on the engineering spec for the wastewater, and then the issues Ryan raised about the land, so they know that we're comfortable with the proposal absent those two pieces. Do I have that right, Elaine? Is that correct?
Okay, Mike, through you. Any answer?
Yes, that's correct, Justina. I also want to just clarify, even though our legal counsel is creating a land disposition agreement and a ground lease, the fine tuning of those are also still subject to negotiation with the developer. So you won't actually see a final on all of that until that final negotiation happens. So the intent of those particular documents are to put the bones of a lease and the bones of a land disposition agreement into this, so that the developers have a sense on what's going on. So you're not approving those, the final of those, until we actually have selected a developer, and the developer has, we've actually fine-tuned all those through legal counsel. So that, there's still some open-endedness to those. It's always typical in trying to develop a property like this in that regard. So those documents were missing only because what was given to us by Mass Housing Partnership was templates that they use. And we opted to go with having our legal counsel review those and then fine tune them to what we feel Wellfleet should have, not should be some generic version of a land disposition agreement or a ground lease. So we're really just not asking Helen that this goes out and gets approved so it's ready to go out on the street. We're not ready to go out on the street with it. We just want that body copy to be approved, so that the attachments that are outstanding, as Justina just pointed out, can be later validated by this board before it even goes out. Remember, as Elaine mentioned, we're not going to be putting this out on the street before February, if not March.
Okay, so why don't we make the motion contingent upon the select board approving the remaining documentation necessary.
Yeah, be attachments I and G.
Do you want to make the motion, Ryan?
I'll butcher it.
We all get to butcher one.
All right.
Go for it. We'll jump on you.
I move to approve the request for proposals for the 95 Lawrence Road housing project as presented by the task force assistant town administrator and reviewed by town council, and direct town staff to issue it following Massachusetts procurement laws, contingent upon select board approval of attachments G and I, draft land disposition agreement and draft ground lease, and wastewater, well, it doesn't say, it's wastewater comparative report. It doesn't say the final selection.
Hey, a wastewater plan.
Okay, finalized wastewater plan.
Awesome job.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Helen May, because I don't feel it's complete enough. for
Janet,
me
aye.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, I.
Michael, aye.
Please include in the minutes my statement after my nay vote.
Yep.
I feel sorry about this. I think it could have waited for 2 weeks. Thank you.
Ryan, awesome job on the motion.
Okay.
Hold on a minute. What do you mean it couldn't have waited for 2 weeks?
Nobody said that, Helen. I said noted to your comment. I noted.
Noted.
Oh, thank you. I thought there was a piece of information I didn't have. Thank you.
Okay.
Noted.
Noted. Okay, so, all right. Sorry, I lost my place for a second.
Oh.
So now we're on to select board goals.
Are you not going to talk about the member as a representative to the task force?
Oh, we can
Oh.
talk about that. I just overlooked that. Yeah, so we can't actually select a representative to that task force, I don't think. The task force is not considered a committee or something like that. So that is why I think that that the town administrator appointed someone last time.
Kathleen was the representative.
Yes,
Right.
Exactly. Helen, you got your hand up still, or is that from previous?
Yeah, I think we can, can't we? I think we can send somebody as a liaison. We can't serve on it, and it's still appointed by the town administrator. So it's not a municipal group in this open meeting sense of the word, but I would hope that those were open meetings. Can somebody, hold on.
On it?
Can somebody clarify that for me, how the meetings have been going on?
They're publicly taking place on Zoom, same as all the other boards and committees. They've been meeting the same way since this task force was established. They have publicly open meetings taking place on Zoom.
With minutes and so forth?
Of course.
And
Yeah.
posting?
Jeez.
Okay, so no, that's what I thought. It was a little confusing, but the committee is not, the task force is not appointed by the select board. So why don't we have a liaison, not a representative, but why can't we send a liaison, choose a liaison?
Well, what was Kathleen's role? She's on here right now. Let's hear from Kathleen. What has your role been on there? And maybe we can continue that. Kathleen?
My hand is up. It's been up. Thank you.
On you.
I was appointed by Dan Hort. Dan appointed someone from the planning board, the zoning board, the school committee, the non-resident taxpayers. He came to one meeting. After that, Mike Travato came in as a liaison from the town administrator's office. And we had our two housing authority chairs, Elaine McElroy and Gary Sorkin. I was able to serve on this committee as a select board member in developing and drafting an RFP, a request for proposal for development. I knew going forward, as we were going into the next stage of this development for 95 Lawrence Road and evaluating a developer, so on and so forth, that I could not sit there without conflict as a select board member. When in May it became apparent that I was not running for re-election, I spoke to Dan and asked to remain on the task force as a community member at large. Everything the task force is doing has been coming forward to the select board on a regular basis. Our meetings are open. Anyone can sit in. I don't see at this point where it's necessary to have a liaison or a representative from the select board. You will be seeing all the developers and the plans that they bring forward as the task force evaluates them. So it's really your call. I had a chat with Maria Broadbent yesterday afternoon. I've invited her to attend some of our meetings. She's done a lot with housing in Maryland, where she's from. And these are meetings that are open to everyone. Once that RFP goes out in late February, early March, and we start to get some proposals back, you'll see them firsthand as they come in. So that's all I can tell you at this point.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Helen.
So I changed my perspective. I agree with Kathleen. It wouldn't be a conflict for any one of us to be even on it because we're not the appointing authority. But if they're open meetings, and I re-clarified that for myself, and we have Kathleen on it for continuity, why should we send anybody special from our board, given that we can all go if we want? We have to let Courtney know if we're going to go, so it might have
It's not
to
a
be
quorum.
posted. Yeah, Well, we could go if it's posted, but the point is, remember, we decided on a policy, or not an official policy, but a way to go a while back, that if we think we're going to go to something, we let Courtney know. And if it hits a quorum, she's going to post it. Remember, we talked about that months ago, pre-Ryan.
So
I was just going to say, Mike, that was a great presentation by Kathleen, and I was thinking exactly that this committee already keeps in such good communication, and we see everything, that I don't see a need for a liaison at all. So, or a representative.
The only thing that I was the only reason I was leaning the other way is that I think it's good with a project this big that there's a select board member that's kind of involved in the process. And I think that's the purpose with which Kathleen was appointed also. I'm not sure what the conflict is, why there's a conflict now. Yeah, I don't know. Elaine, do you have your hand?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say it's wonderful to have Kathleen's continuity, because she's been so strongly involved, and to have Mike Travato as ex officio from the town has been wonderful. But as we go forward, as you say, it is one of the biggest projects the town is doing. It was the potential conflict is because the 95 task force will be the evaluation committee for the developers. Those will all be open meetings. And because the task force would bring the recommendation to the select board, I think it was perceived there might be a conflict. Our consultant and Mass Housing Partnership did not see it as a conflict. So I don't know if you felt like you'd want to run that by town council, if you felt strongly about having an actual, a current select board member as part of the committee.
I mean, personally, I think that the reason why there was a select board person appointed to the committee along with planning board was to have the involvement, and I don't see why that would or should change. There's a previous select board member on the task force right now, but that's not the same as a current select board member. I think it's important. I think it's important to have that we're involved, so long as it's legal and above board. And if the select board member would have to recuse themselves on one thing or another, then that would be a decision they'd have to make based on the conflict of interest law, basically. And I don't see how it's really a conflict of interest, but that's not really, I'm not the lawyer, but I think town council could weigh in on that. Ryan?
I just wanted to answer the conflict of interest, because I had a similar thing happen when I first joined the select board, where an RFP the Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee approved while I was a member of that committee and voted for it, came up at, it was either the first or second select board meeting after the election. I don't remember which. At the time, I reached out to conflict of interest attorney of the day to make sure there wasn't a conflict. They had me file a appearance of conflict of interest, and I think that was submitted to the entire select board as well. But they said that at the time, I do not believe it was considered a conflict of interest.
I mean, there's no personal gain there, so that's where conflict of interest law lies. Justina?
I don't think the issue is conflict of interest, let me rephrase that. I don't have an opinion on that, but the charter does say when you're on the select board, you can't sit on other committees. And as a liaison, you go to meetings, you sit, you raise your hand, you talk, you participate, you know what's going on. To me, it's a real gray area. It's like, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You're on two committees. And so I think the select board probably should stay in its lane. And if there's a need for updates, then the responsibility for updates should fall on the committee, not the select board member. I think it's going to start getting real blurry if we start having liaisons to all these select board liaisons to committees because we're interested and we want to update and we want to participate and we want to, you know.
Well,
I was chair of the Water Commission. If I had had a select board liaison, particularly one that disagreed with everything that I was doing, which could easily have happened, it would have made it hard to do what was already a very hard job. So I'm just going to say, I think it's cleaner if the select board stays in its lane, and that's what the charter asks us to do. It asks us not to be on other committees.
The charter says we can't appoint ourselves to other committees at the appointing authority. That's why when Kathleen was appointed, she was appointed by the town administrator to a task force. So it is different. Like Kathleen had been serving on that committee as a select board member or on that task force, but
I have to look
not
up the
appointed
charter,
by the
but
select board.
what
So
you told me is you can't be on another committee. I have to go back and look at the charter. I'm not a charter expert, but I think we're not supposed to sit on multiple committees.
well, then why was Kathleen on the committee for so long? I mean, I just don't understand the difference here.
No, I don't either,
So-
but I believe that's what the charter says.
Gary is on here.
Was Kathleen a voting member?
Yes.
So that's where it gets tricky. So I just want to clarify that a liaison is strictly the go-between between the committee and maybe the town administrator or the select board. That if you're a liaison, you do not participate in the discussion, and you don't participate in the discussion. You're just a go-between for information. So, and we can't be on a board that we've appointed
Right, which
or
is,
a task force because they're appointed.
we didn't appoint that. That it's the, if we're not the appointing authority, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
But we're
here.
not supposed to be on other committees, being a liaison. We could also start off with asking if anybody wants to be a liaison and go from there. Let them defend the position.
Mike?
I'd be, Helen, go ahead.
Yeah, so guys, I don't need to be appointed to be a liaison to the Shellfish Advisory Committee because I just go. I'm a member of the public and I weigh in if needed. But basically, I'm there just to know more about what this advisory committee does. I'm not a liaison. We stopped doing official liaisons a long time ago. And there are other people in the shellfishing community that just show up like that regularly, and it's even easier now. I suggest that Kathleen's right. And I suggest, in other words, this is not about conflict of interest unless it affected your finances positively or negatively. It's more about checks and balances and keeping the horizontal structure of our government functioning well. So to have any one of us be an official member of a group that's making these decisions and then having the contract come to us is something we might want to think about. Kathleen did and decided not to do it, you know, and I get that. And I'm glad that she's going to continue as a member, you know, member of the public. And I don't think we need a liaison to this. I just hope that we all go to it and that we stay updated. And, you know, Justina, you know, it's good when people go to other committee meetings. I go to FinCom meetings during the budget season so I can know more. But that's part of our job. And having an appetite to know more is part of our job and makes things more productive. I don't think we need an official designee. And we're not the ones who can decide that anyway. It's Maria Broadbent, our new town administrator. So why don't we just leave that up to her and hope that if one of us offers ourselves, that we mind our P's and Q's about conflict of interest. And then I have a question. Didn't you guys all get, didn't the other 4 people on this board all get what I sent you for our canceled meeting? It's state law that says you can't serve on something you appointed, you are the point of authority for.
Right.
We have something slightly different in our charter, but the state law is actually more restrictive. Thank you.
That's why we didn't appoint this task force. The select board didn't. So that's not really relevant to this subject. Gary?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing that was said, and it speaks to the conflict of interest question. We do not have a representative from the ZBA on the 95 Lawrence Task Force. And the reason is that the ZBA is the permitting entity that this will go to. And so that would be an inherent conflict of interest down the line. And for that reason, we don't have a ZBA representative, but we do have a planning board.
So when the task force was initially started, Gary, it was a representative from the select board, a representative from the planning board, and
correct.
Right. So what we're doing is, if we do not have a select board member on there, then we're actually doing something different than what has been going on in that task force, which is fine. I'm just pointing that out.
Right. You're right, Mike. And I think you're also right. Everyone is saying that this is not the select board's committee or task force, but it was the town administrator.
There was a reason why the town administrator appointed a select board member on there in the first place, is all I'm saying. And I think it was for a good reason. So I'm going to leave it up to Maria. If anybody wants to do it, I guess contact Maria. If Maria feels that it's an appropriate thing to do, then she can do that or not do that. And then I think we can just move off of this subject now, because we are not at the appointing authority, but I'm glad we had this conversation. I think Kathleen has one more thing to say. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, I want to say that I guess where I see conflict, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, because you've given it a lot of thought. We're going to be coming to you with recommendations. We're going to be making recommendations to you, the select board, with regard to a developer. How could I do that as a select board person? How could I look at a developer, form a recommendation, form a bias of opinion, and then go and sit at another table as a select board member and say yay or nay? I think that's the conflict for me.
I would say this
RFP is completely different, Michael. It's completely different. It's design, it's criteria, it's a draft. What comes next is the real meat and potatoes, the big money.
Well, I disagree. The RFP is full of suggestions and proposals, and I mean, the RFP is no different than I mean, if you're submitting an RFP that you've worked on to the board to approve and also approve it, I don't see how that's any different. But let's not get into the weeds on it. But I really don't see any difference in those two things. And I'd like to just move on to the next subject here. Okay, 2021 select board goals.
So Michael, after reading everybody's goals, I was going to suggest that we consolidate them under one heading, one title, such as affordable housing or harbor dredging, and see where we agree. I mean, it's not even agreement, but see how many actual separate goals there are, because a lot of them are all similar.
How much overlap there is.
Yes, yes. And then with that, when they're compiled, you could, maybe Courtney could put in some of the particular comments that the different select board members wrote.
That's our standard process for this. So this is just giving you an overall look at what the five
Okay.
have said.
So we're not going to discuss each goal now.
No, you don't have to. I'll compile them and consolidate them as you've
Okay.
requested, and next time we can get deeper into it.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't
I
want to
would
jump
just like
the
to
gun.
point out that all mine are the same as last year because none of them are
No.
completed, so.
No, no.
What, Helen?
No,
ahead.
Mike, they're not all the same. Oh, 9 of them. Yeah, versions. So I really appreciate seeing everybody's language. And I agree with Janet, you know, let's have, I was excited to see that a number of us, at least 3 in a few instances, wanted to focus on the same area. What I would like when we get the kind of list that Janet described just now is that, for example, if it's to resolve the issue around the bike trail and the improvement to Route 6, whatever you want to title that, that would be the heading. And then you would have the specific language that came into us with this document listed under it. Sure, it'll be another few pieces of paper, but that's a very valuable document for me to discuss things out of. I could, of course, just refer to what we got in today's packet, because I like our nuances. I like Janet's nuances. I like Mike's nuances, et cetera, all of us. And look forward to working on the stuff in a kind of triage list, so that if only one of us brought something up, that would be at the bottom of the list, but it would still be on there. It's a document that shows us what we're thinking about this year. I mean, there's so many things that are just obvious that we have to work on anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Courtney can handle this, do the compilation.
Yeah.
I would like to add one, if I could. I know mine's already insane.
Oh, you already have enough, Ryan.
If you can also email it to me, Ryan.
All right.
Oh, no, let's hear it.
Say it out loud.
All right, that's to, for 95 Lawrence Road to have the decentralized cluster wastewater option.
Say that again, that to have it?
Yes, for the neighborhood option for 95 Lawrence Road.
When he emails me that language, it'll come back to you all in the exact compilation.
Okay, so I think we can move on from this. I think Courtney will put that all together, what the overlap is, and then you can kind of add your initials to things that you think are important, and then that'll be the final goals document after that. Okay, so now we're on to the letter for those involved at town meeting from Ryan. Anyone have any issues with it or amendments to it, or are ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
1 second, there needs to be an amendment. Man, I forgot about it. I have some of the names wrong, and Danny Silverman corrected me.
Okay.
You can just send those to me and I'll make those.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So just make the motion as amended with the corrected spellings or whatever you need to say.
I move to send a thank you letter to those involved in the annual town meeting as drafted by Ryan Curley and as amended at this meeting.
Helen, second.
All in favor, roll call vote?
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Christina, I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, aye. Thanks for writing that, Ryan.
Yeah, that was very thoughtful.
Okay, Select Board Member Wilson, we have a letter drafted about the bike trail to the National Seashore. Helen? You wanna
Yes, so
speak first?
Justina, I made it short, I made it sweet. I broke it up into more than one paragraph just for reading ease. And I hope it seems general enough to you. And we could send this out. And the only thing we might want to discuss briefly is who would reach out to the various people who we're sending it to try to figure out how to get a roundtable meeting about this for the first time ever in this process since 2014. All the groups involved, and the public could obviously attend, but we wouldn't have, it's not a hearing, but to have all the groups involved there at the same time at a roundtable meeting, we could host it, and to simply hear what everybody has to say at the same time. Because one of the things that I was saddest about, or I felt was the most lacking, was that there weren't all the people affected by this, the park and so forth, the select board, everybody, at those two abutter meetings that I did go to, and I got a huge amount of information from that hasn't been shared at a roundtable situation since then. So I hope, Justina, that this sits well with you in terms of its brevity and clarity. Do I hear anything that could be changed? I took what was suggested at the last meeting.
Well, I was touched that you went to all that effort, and it certainly is brief indeed. I guess I have a question for you, Helen, in terms of process. I wonder if you think there's anything to be gained by first inviting him simply to sit down with the Wellfleet Select Board, like a pregame before the nice collaborative meeting you've suggested, and just get his thoughts, like a brown bag lunch type meeting, and just say, this has been, a difficult and long process, and gee, what do you think? So that, because you never know the outcome when you invite everybody, you know what I mean? And we could have a civilized discussion first.
Well, the issue there is that, and I hear you, and I think that's a diplomatic thought, perhaps useful. And I thought about it too, right? Because I sit in quite a few meetings with Brian Karlstrom, and
yeah, you know him.
He's good at that kind of, but wait, here's the reason I want at least to let all these other parties know about it and ask the DOT and the DCR to attend. It's an invitation, right? It's not a requirement, because what hasn't happened is having them hear from all the main players at the same time. There have been a lot of small groups meeting, and I think it's time for us to have everybody in the room, at least, whether they want to say something or not. That's the reason that this is jump-started by the two letters we got from Brian Karlstrom, but it needs to be inclusive in a way that we haven't done yet. It isn't a requirement. This isn't a hearing. It's just everybody having the same information at the same time, given that we might just share informally opinions. I thought about it. I thought about what you were saying just now when I was redrafting the letter, which wasn't very hard to do.
Well, if they travel all the way here, the more people in a room, the less likely it's going to be informal.
Justina, they're not traveling. It's a Zoom. That's what makes it easy.
Correct. Correct. I stand corrected. But the more people involved, the less likely it will be informal. That's all.
So can I have a clarification? This started as Helen wanting to respond to Superintendent Karlstrom's letter. Then I said I wasn't happy with the letter. I'm not exactly excited about this letter either, and I won't sign it because it's just not a well-written letter. So is the point to meet with Superintendent Karlstrom first and discuss his point of view? I had suggested that the Bike Trail and Walkways Committee they had said that they already had like everything laid out before them, and they had discussed it with the seashore and the abutters. So, and we were going to have them come and present their plan. So I think to have, I'm not sure who Helen means by everybody involved. I think she means now she means the DCR, DOT, Seashore, Bike and Walkways Committee, and us, and abutters and people involved. I think we need to just break it down into what we really wanted to do at the beginning, which was to meet with the Superintendent Carlstrom. So can we start with that and see where he's at, and then move into a bigger meeting with the Bike and Walkways and us? And then also when the townspeople are a little more clear and I'm more clear with them, then we can go to the DOT and the DCR. It's going to be a big meeting otherwise.
So I agree with Janet on this. I think it would be a good idea to meet with Superintendent Carlstrom first. And basically, I would like to have the Bike and Walkways Committee, at least someone from that at that meeting also, to sort of see what the avenues are. I've already been to one meeting with the Bike and Walkways Committee and the superintendent and some other members of the administration in the Seashore. And so I have a little bit of information on, what it would take to do something through utilizing parts of National Seashore property. And so I think it'd be fruitful for the board to get that information also. It's not an easy process, but it's something that is possible to do, particularly with existing pathways or rights of way, which there are numerous fire roads and rights of way through the National Seashore. So, I think it would be good to sort of go there with the National Seashore first. And then I think the goal really for me is, regardless of what happens, to try and create some safe wooded continuation of bike travel through Wellfleet. And if it involves a combination of power lines and fire roads and areas that are town owned or public rights of way, then I think there's a possibility of that happening. It certainly can't happen without meeting with the National Seashore and also having our committee that's at the forefront of navigating this involved. I mean, they don't have any means to acquire land or to negotiate either. So we can't really expect the Bike and Walkways Committee to do that work when they don't have the authority to do so. So they basically can map out ideas and stuff, but that's pretty much as far as I think that their jurisdiction allows them. So it really does take multiple parties, but I think it would be a good idea to just meet with the superintendent first. That's where I am on it. Ryan?
I basically echo that. One of the things where it's saying all or for all parties to meet together or whatever, there's no definition as to who those parties are. So it's not clear. I think that we can amend this letter to be able to send it to Superintendent Carlstrom. There we go. So if you want, I have a proposed amendment.
Mike, may I address that, please?
Yeah, address it, and then I'll allow Ryan to make a motion to amend.
Hey, Ryan, the cover letter to Courtney with the Word document had a list of the people to send it to. So I apologize that I didn't put dear so-and-so at the top of it, because I thought that would be something we would be talking about, and indeed we are. So of course, Janet listed them accurately. DCR, DOT, National Park Service, Bike and Walkways Committee, Select Board. And of course, it would be an open meeting, so people could show up or not. But there would be a little outreach to let abutters know about it. That would be considerate of them. And the reason I think it's essential that somebody from the DCR and DOT is at least informed is so that they understand that there's a process, a discussion process that's going on that doesn't exclude them, and that preferably they wouldn't ignore, because there's been an awful lot of left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing here. So Ryan, I agree with you. It should have some people it's addressed to, but leaving any one of the major decision-making groups out at this point would only perpetuate the problems we've been having all along for a number of years now, where we haven't all been discussing this together, because it affects all of us. Thank you.
So I guess I understand where you're coming from, Helen. I think potentially inviting one person from each of those agencies might be fruitful.
Yeah.
We certainly couldn't have a discussion similar to the discussion we had last time, along with the National Seashore, in that sort of format, the way that we had in March. I think that might be not so productive. I think we need to sort of have a sort of working type meeting.
Yes.
With them, and not necessarily a public comment meeting, if that were the case. And in that type of format, I think it might work to have one person from Bike and Walkways, one from DOT, one from DCR, one from National Seashore, and the Select Board or something like that, to sort of go over options, I guess.
Yes, that is what this invitation in my mind was about. However, it's going to be an open meting. And
sure, but I would prefer it to be a working meeting where we're not taking public comments.
Right, and I couldn't agree more, because it's short, but it needs to be a situation where anybody that needs or wants to can hear what's discussed.
Sure.
I completely agree. I don't call them working meetings, but a meeting that's very focused on the exchange at the table. And that would be the most important thing. And given that we can still do it by Zoom, it will be a whole lot more convenient. It will be more convenient to organize. So the reason to get back to Ryan's concern, the reason I left who this would be sent to open so that we could discuss it at this meeting is simply because this is something we need to decide together. And I think the exchange has been productive, just as it was last time. I think we should send it to one person in the two agencies, to Brian Carlstrom, to the Bike and Walkways Committee, and to delegate somebody to organize this in terms of outreach before we leave the topic and go on to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Jessica.
strongly disagree. The more people you have, the more talking you have. The last meeting we had, our guests got yelled at. This is still an inflammatory topic, and Brian Carlstrom is a valuable ally, and the more people you invite, the more is the possibility you will lose control of the meeting, as happened in our last meeting. And I know that you're envisioning this orderly work meeting in a kind of kumbaya way that goes great, that everybody exchanges their ideas. But to me, it sounds unwieldy. There's a lot of participants, and You can't control every element of it. So I'm suggesting you break down your goals. Meeting 1, you know, the select board, Brian Carlstrom, a member of the Bike and Walkways, has been suggested. And then as you have a series of successful meetings, broaden it. But to just invite the same kind of constituency and expand it to Brian Carlstrom, which was our last open meeting, it was very painful to watch our guests get yelled at. And I would really like to not have that happen again. And even if everybody was super, super, super polite, if you have a big meeting, everybody can't talk. And it gets harder and harder to exchange information because everybody wants to raise their hand and say their piece. And it's not as productive because there's not time for everybody to talk.
So, sorry to
that's my
interrupt.
opinion.
If this meeting were to occur, it would be a meeting where there would be no comments from the public. That's how I would conduct it as a work meeting. We would not have comments. I don't think it would be productive. Like, that was a different type of meeting. That was almost like a public hearing, what we had in March. That's what I would not allow that to go on in this sort of format. That was a presentation of a plan. This is about something else. So I think it would be able to be controlled because everybody would be muted except for those involved.
Yeah, that's right.
So Mike, I suggest we have what's called a work meeting, which we have done as a select board in the past. And I also suggest that we start with just having Superintendent Carlstrom, talking to him and what he sees, what his vision is, and what he sees and proposes, because we really have not heard that yet. If he is offering land or different pathways. So that was the beginning of this. This started off with just Superintendent Carlstrom writing the letter to the DCR and DOT. And it's kind of turned into this whole bigger thing. So I suggest we invite Superintendent Carlstrom to come to our meeting and we stick to that one, his presentation and his information at that time, and then we expand it. And we just call him. We don't have to write a letter. We just call him and ask him if he'll come.
May I contribute to that, please?
1 second. I just would like to also have someone, at least 1 or 2 people from Bike and Walkways there.
Okay.
As we would for any other committee that works on a specific project or is in their wheelhouse, we would usually ask them to join also. So if we went that way.
Okay.
May I say, this would be a public meeting and anybody who wants to show up is fine. And I agree with the idea of closing it to comments just for the sake of time. But this is a very important issue. And what I really want is for people from the DCR and the DOT to be able to speak directly with the park. There have been all these little side meetings that haven't been public, where a lot of information has been shared. And we all need to know what that is. And when I say we, I mean park, agencies, Bike and Walkways, Select Board. And if you want to sort of do this in a series of meetings, the problem is that the carryover sharing of information is always inadequate compared to having people right there asking questions. And the thing that most makes me want to do this, which may be obvious to some of you, is the response to Brian Carlstrom's question a long time ago, my question, where I said, doesn't the state and the park sometimes work to fund projects together? And he looked at me and he said, well, yes. In other words, the two agencies have been going along and they have separate finances, but believe me, they've both been spending money together on these 2 projects, which never would have been 2 projects if the terminus hadn't been suggested to be where they're thinking it's going to be now. So I would like everybody to be on the same page before we go forward with this, and particularly before we go into the hearing that's going to come up with the DOT, so that we can all get on the same page. They may say we don't want to come, right? But I would like at least to formally extend to them an invitation and knowledge that this is going to happen. I'm fine with limiting it in terms of people that show up.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ryan.
Okay. So, I mean, this started as a response specifically to Superintendent Carlson's letter regarding the bike trail, which came out different than what we were, or it came out very different than what we were expecting after the meeting he was in with us. I think the first thing before we invite all these other agencies into a roundtable or anything like that is to pin down exactly what the seashore is willing to do. We don't want to go into a meeting and then have the seashore just say, oh yeah, no. And for the conversation to end at that point regarding this. There are other options beyond just, you know, the seashore, but I think it's important to try to pin it down as much as we can ahead of time before we invite a larger field, so that we can present, you know, some of the potential options.
I agree.
I agree.
Me too.
Okay, I hear you all. And if we can do it sooner rather than later, it's easier to get a meeting together with Carlson if it's just him. So that might be more efficient.
Yeah, and then we can follow that up with a larger meeting.
Yeah.
So
I disagree, forgive me, I disagree with Janet. I think this is a good letter. I'm not particularly fond of having my letter style insulted. Hold on, I'm not done. And I would never do that to anybody on this board.
So I have an amendment.
Hold on, I'm sorry. If you don't mind, may I finish? So
Yeah.
the letter is important because it's documentation and it doesn't say anything that we haven't you know, brought up here. And if you just want it addressed to Brian Carlstrom, that's fine with me. In other words, I would assume it would be copied to, you know, bike and walkways and so forth. But if you just want to invite Brian Carlstrom, let's figure out a date for a working meeting with him at his convenience. I have his secretary's email address and phone number because we had to set up the low-lying roads meeting together for a herring river project. And so when do we think we could do this? Next week, if he can do it?
I told Ryan that I'd allow him to make a motion to amend. So I'd like to honor that.
Okay.
What his motion is?
It's to amend the letter so it reads basically, so it's only addressed to Superintendent Carlstrom in the National Seashore. So it would be, we invite you to and strike out the roundtable meetings of all parties involved and replace with to a meeting to discuss the DCR's bike trail and the DOT's Route 6 project as currently being proposed, you know, same language, and strike out the entirety of the second paragraph and just leave the rest of it as is and just address it to Brian Carlstrom.
Actually, I think if we just took out altogether for the first time and left in the thing about taxpayer money, because that really is a consideration here. A whole lot of money has already been spent on this, and it's been a difficult process that really hasn't produced any community-supported result, to say the least. So I think leaving the second paragraph in, but taking out altogether for the first time, I could do that. I can accommodate that.
I would like to second Ryan's motion.
I'm asking Ryan what he thinks of what I just said through you, Mike.
Yep. Ryan?
I don't know, whatever we can do to get this letter done.
I would prefer to leave out the taxpayer money is preferably before any tax. further taxpayer money is spent. I don't think the National Seashore is a party to any of that money spending, so I don't really see the necessity to putting it into an invitation to Brian Carlstrom. If you want to send
Okay.
something eventually.
I get that.
It's just irrelevant to them.
Mike, through you to Helen. Yeah, I don't think this letter should take an opinion. It's an invitation to a meeting. So the more factual and less opinionated, the better.
Well, saying taxpayer money's been spent is
True,
not
but
an
it's
opinion.
kind of like a campaign letter. So
I
like,
second Ryan's motion.
Language, because what we're really saying is, well, would you like to come to a meeting about the bike trail?
Or we heard you and you said you wanted to.
Yeah,
so we invite-
I like, somebody suggested that Courtney call him or email him and invite him to a meeting. That would be my preference because it's neutral.
Yeah.
No, I think it should be a letter coming from all of us so he knows that we're all inviting him.
I know, but I don't want to
There's a
sit here
motion on the
writing it.
table that has been seconded. Ryan has moved to amend the letter as drafted. I've seconded that. Basically, it's the letter inviting him to a meeting. I think it's pretty clear. I think it's a good idea to send a letter rather than to call
Okay,
personally, just because
okay,
it is the National Seashore.
all right,
And we are asking to have a formal meeting. So,
okay.
so there's a motion and it's seconded. It's takes out, I think, does anybody need to hear it again?
No,
Well, so
Okay.
didn't we just decide not to have all the parties involved?
Exactly.
Right,
Yes,
so the
we
first
did.
sentence says a
That's in the
roundtable
amendment.
meeting of all parties involved.
That's
Ryan
in the
just-
amendment, Janet.
Ryan
Was
amended
that in your amendment,
Yes.
Ryan? Okay,
to
sorry.
remove all that. And remove the second paragraph.
Yes. Good to go.
Ryan, why don't you just reread your amended motion? I'm sorry, so everybody
All right.
understands what we're voting on.
So we invite you, just read it out or write, or the
Just
strike
read
out
it out.
version.
Just read it out.
Okay, so Bailey Superintendent Carlstrom, we invite you to attend a meeting to discuss the DCR's bike trail and the DOT's Route 6 project as currently being proposed to improve the stretch of Route 6 in Wellfleet in the vicinity of Main Street and Cahoon Hollow, and strike out the entirety of the second paragraph and leave everything else as is.
So that's the motion that's been seconded. Can we have a roll call vote? As to send
Helen,
it?
I.
Janet, nay.
Christina abstain.
And
Michael,
I,
aye.
It was 3 to 1 to 1.
3 to 1. Okay.
I move that we delegate the chair to sign it on behalf of the select board. So that we don't all have to go in and it can be sent out quickly.
I second.
aye.
Roll call vote.
Helen, I.
Janet, nay. I'd like to see it before it goes out.
Christina, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, aye.
I'll
Okay.
shoot you the amended text shortly unless Courtney's already done it.
I haven't yet, but
Okay,
I'll
I
make
can do it.
Okay, thank you,
It'll
Ryan.
only take a minute, so.
And Courtney,
Just
you'll
so-
add our name, you'll
Yes.
add our name to this, to the end of it, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we just move to authorize the town administrator to sign this Green Communities grant contract, or is it controversial in any way?
No, I would second that.
I
Okay,
move to authorize the town to sign the Green Communities Grant.
town administrator.
No, I move
And
to authorize the town administrator to sign the Green Communities Act grant.
Second,
Second, yep.
all in favor? Roll call.
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, I do have a request. That's for the town administrator to send all 17 items of attachment B.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, and now we're on to COVID-19 updates and recommendations. Maria?
Hi, good afternoon. I've probably, since this town administrator's report includes some information about status of some things COVID related, and it was previously scheduled for last week, it's probably more current for me giving you a report than what's provided in your packet. The library is looking to do an opening in at least in some part coming up pretty soon. I've also asked town staff that have been working remotely for the most part to come back to the offices where we need to make some accommodations for people, either because they're in spaces that are too small for multiple people, or they have something else that makes them uncomfortable. We will physically make some accommodations for them. There still may be some logical reasons why we continue to have some staff from time to time work remotely, largely for efficiencies, to be perfectly honest with you. But I am looking to get folks back to working, particularly here in town hall and some instances as we go through and look at sort of how we're looking at some of the financial things. Certainly be easier to have a look at that if the people are actually here. We're not looking to change operationally how town hall operates in terms of the public. We continue to keep that on an appointment basis. We have made a change to having the permits administrator actually physically back in the office full time so that we can catch up and keep up with issuing building permits and things of that nature. So happy to answer any questions.
Ryan, go ahead.
There's guidance from the state as to what the mandatory requirements are for reopening office spaces. Currently, it's 50% occupancy. You do have to make provisions for, if there's close quarters, you have to provide screened situations for the employees so that they're not less likely to spread within the office space. I just think about like the DPW offices and the conservation health department and building the building inspectors as well. They're all kind of tight. They're all kind of like in one office suite.
Well, they were, but they're not anymore. So we have physically moved one person out of an office space. We have a vacancy right now. And we also have some of the folks are never in the office at the same time. They do have an issue with a lot of desks being in the same place and maybe a lot of clutter. And it might be something in the future to look at as to whether they have a space that's functioning the way it's the most efficient. But we have moved one person out of that office space to make sure that there is not a distancing issue.
One suggestion I would have is to consider repurposing some of the meeting spaces, at least within town hall. Public bodies probably are not going to be holding meetings in a physical location for a while.
I appreciate that, and we'll do whatever we need to do to have a look at the space and how we're using it. We've got spaces here in town hall that aren't even occupied. So, there may be some options there. Some of the meeting spaces we actually use use often internally. But there certainly are some ways that we can move folks around a little bit just to make sure that everybody's comfortable where they're not in the same space too close to one another, or they're set up to have the right kind of environment to actually get some work done.
Okay, and do you have a formalized reopening plan?
In terms of reopening to the public?
Yes.
No,
Or no,
no,
not to the
I do
public,
not.
for having staff back in the office.
I'm working with staff on an individual basis. If they have concerns, we'll address their concerns, but
Okay,
by and large, staff needs to be back to work in the office.
it's mandatory by the state to have a formalized plan. And that's part of the reason is provide clarity for staff. There is mandatory guidance from the state, and we need to make sure that our town offices follow it. Thank you.
Helen?
Yeah, a couple of things. Maria, I appreciate your looking at the reality of the situation in terms of town hall particularly. But it is true what Ryan said. Now I have a question. Nobody may know the answer. I don't think Hillary's still on, but just before this meeting, I got a text that said that Governor Baker is going to keep us at phase 3. Did I read that wrong? In other words, something just happened today. Does anybody know about this, or was I misreading it?
We are moving to phase 3, step 2, beginning on Monday, October 5th.
Okay, so I agree with Ryan. We're supposed to have a plan. Now, I would hope, and I don't hear that Maria is not going to do this. I would assume that maybe you would do it, Maria, but that the staff in the different buildings be able to meet together with you and have input about how this is going to go together. And the good thing about town hall is the room downstairs, which is a public meeting room, could be somebody's office. And then there's a vacated office, where the rec department used to be upstairs. So there really is quite a lot of room in town hall for people to have individual offices. What's of concern to me, and this isn't just in town hall, is that I have heard, and I've also witnessed one scary moment, 2 people from the same department in the same vehicle without masks. Now, maybe they're a pod, maybe they were just tested. I don't know. I didn't say anything. And their window, one of them opened a window to say hi. I mean, we didn't talk. It was hello. We are about to go into the period of the year where it's too cold to have windows open. And I have a question to Courtney perhaps, or Courtney would be more aware of the winter ventilation capacity for town hall, because Maria, you haven't been here yet in winter. And Courtney, what is the ventilation in town hall like in general? I don't mean air conditioning. I don't mean heating. Is there any ventilation?
I mean, I'm thinking, I don't see much ventilation in terms of anything beyond an AC or a heater or windows. I don't recall. I'm not thinking of any sort of ventilation system.
What kind of ventilation are you looking for, Helen? What do you call ventilation?
Okay, so for example, and I really didn't know the answer to this. At a certain point, before it was illegal to smoke in restaurants and bars, a lot of bars and restaurants put in very good ventilation that sucked smoke straight up because they had sections for smoking.
Air cleaners and air cleaning.
Well, yeah, air, not necessarily cleaners, but ventilation systems like they have in hospitals and frankly in airplanes, where whatever air there is gets sucked straight up. There's no cross draft.
There's no air filtration system in this building, but the air does circulate because every time you have a furnace, it needs to have makeup air to compensate for the air that it's warming or cooling. So they do
Yes.
take in air and run it through the system. The air has to circulate in a building that has an HVAC system. It doesn't matter
this
whether
is
you
what I-
work in this building in the winter or not.
Well, so we're coming into a time when we can't have windows open, and there's no fancy extra kind of way to take the air in a room out of
We
the
don't
room.
we don't have the
Hold on.
windows open now.
No,
The
I
windows
know.
are not open all summer long.
Yeah, because of the air conditioning, right. Here's my question. I would think that unless someone is able to be in an office with the door closed, that any staff within one of the town buildings that's moving around at all has to wear a mask. And wearing a mask is a huge drag. I wear glasses, don't even get me started. I hate it. I hate it. But we can't afford to have any more employees sick. And we need them to feel safe. And it is a requirement in workspaces anyway. So I just wanted to put that out there so that staff can feel safe if they're going to be told, asked, you said asked, that was a good verb, to come in, given that you, Maria, are going to be working with individuals and, you know, meeting people's needs as required.
Yeah, if staff needs accommodations in order to be able to come back to work, then I'll work with them individually for the accommodations so they are able to get back to work. You know, as far as folks wearing a mask, I mean, what we want more than anything is for everybody to be comfortable. And whatever level that comfort level takes on their part, you know, we'll work with people. That's not an issue. You know, by and large, your staff here at Town Hall have been working, for the most part, through everything in person on a day-to-day basis. They have already been doing that, except for a couple of people. But for the most part, your staff here in Town Hall have been working here in Town Hall.
Justina?
Yeah, two comments. Well, three. First, thank you, Maria, for joining us as our TA during COVID and handling this. Seems you got hit with a lot of exploding things at once. All kidding aside, I think for me, there'd be two things I would just comment on with the COVID. One would be the phrase that came up with the communication policy, which Ryan brought up. And I would think that to the extent we have to obey Governor Baker's guidelines, perhaps Hillary Greenberg's office could do that, lay that out for you, because I think that's her. Didn't she do that for our restaurants and so forth? And
Yeah, I think it would fall under their responsibility for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm happy to work with her and
yeah, perhaps
she and I can work together. She can do the drafting and I can help.
Yeah,
with
she might know some of that already because it sure seems like there's a lot of it. And then the second I would think is once that sounds like you're already communicating a lot with people, but I think we're all sort of scared with this COVID, or maybe I'm the only scared person, but I think one of the benefits of a communication policy is to reduce the fear level. And I think now that you're our new TA, people look to you to lead us through this and help keep the fear level down. So I hope Hillary can do some of the legwork for you. And like you said, most of our staff, it seems to me, has already been working and dealing with it.
They've already been here.
Yeah, I mean, I go to the dump, all the guys seem to be there.
Have not been.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And please lean on staff to give you a hand. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, the only thing that concerns me a little bit is if everybody, well, it depends on the capacity of town hall, but if we don't have a rotating schedule to some sort in some of the offices, that if there is a case in those offices then everyone would have to quarantine. We might be out however long those employees would be required to quarantine. So you could lose maybe if, say, like building and health and conservation are alternating days now, if they're in at the same time and sharing office space, then we might.
They're not.
Okay.
They're not. We brought one person back who was working remotely, who is now not in the same space. So
Sure, I'm just throwing out things to
Yeah.
think about. I'm not, I'm just, the concern I have generally, not just specifically about that.
understood.
It's just that, if there is rotating schedules to some degree where it makes sense, it might make more sense and be more productive, especially in the event that if there is a case that we don't have 2 people out on quarantine at the same time or multiple people. But, and the other thing is just the amount of time for people to maybe have to make their adjustments with their schedules and their home lives to make sure that they have, adequate time to adjust that, whether it be, a week or whatever it is.
Sure.
Want to keep people.
Yeah, my initial communication to staff about that was last week.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I just figured I'd throw out those 2 concerns, and that's really what I have, and that everybody feels like they're in a safe work environment, and
I want nothing more. I want everybody to feel comfortable.
Okay, yeah, keep morale up.
As much as we can and be as productive as possible, and that's my goal.
Okay. And does anybody have any other comments on this, or any other COVID updates, recommendations? Ryan?
Just something really quick. I sent it, some of the current information from the state to the board. There's been a noticeable uptick in the rate of positive tests for individuals. The majority of the testing is actually repeat testing on the same people over and over again. That's being done by the state. But in the past month, it's the positive rate of actual individuals, rather than counting each test that individual takes, has been increasing. I think it's over 3% currently, and it's been on a steady climb for the entirety of the month. Barnstable County still has really low numbers, so we're in a pretty good situation, but the state situation seems to be getting worse a little bit. So just something to be aware of.
Okay. Okay, select board reports.
Mike?
What's up?
So last night there was a dredging committee meeting, and they've asked me and told me that in order for so everybody should know that tomorrow is the dredging on the federal channel is beginning. And the idea with dredging is that when the federal channel is done, if it's done quickly enough and weather cooperates, that we could then go into phase 2, which is dredging by the fuel dock and the launching ramp, right? Closer to from the breakwater. And they would like to start it in December if that's possible. The state regulations require certain procedures to be followed in order to solicit bids and finalize the process. This is a time-sensitive process, and the select board needs to approve the contract as soon as possible, or the RFP as soon as possible. Mike Travato has the document at this time. He could add in on this, but we need to schedule a select board meeting. I think it's probably too late today to schedule it for Friday, but Monday sometime we need that the select board have to sign off on this, and they have to be able to see it. But time is of the essence. So Mike, do you want to add anything to this?
No, we can just schedule it as soon as possible. I don't mind having a meeting for it, if we need to do that. So,
Okay, can we schedule one now for Monday?
Monday, let's see.
October 5th?
Monday, October.
And there only needs to be 3 of us as a majority to.
Monica,
Are
is
you
the point of order,
available?
can't we just leave it in the select board office and sign it?
No,
No?
no, Courtney
Oh.
said no.
We have to have a vote.
Motion to approve the.
Oh, yeah,
Approve. Monday, what time is, let's see.
tied.
Yeah. Can do
8:30 in the
midday.
morning.
Yeah, I
and
can
9 o'clock.
do, like, 1 or 2 o'clock or something like that.
It's good for me.
2 o'clock, I guess. Is that good for
Wait
anybody?
a minute.
Should be a quick one, so
It's good, yeah, it's
I'll
just,
probably just do it on my phone.
yeah.
Say hi.
Hi, Violet.
How you doing?
Hi, Mike,
Yep,
Mike.
yes.
So Monday, I've been driving a death trap around, as it turns out, and I have to have something new put into my car. And I already changed the appointment once because of another meeting. Monday during the day, I can't do it unless it's in the morning.
We only need
Before-
3 of you. So if one more person can confirm that they can attend to get this done, you can do it.
I have to say, if I would, sure, fine.
I mean, you'll still
But
get the information, but it's a matter of who can attend to just make the motion. Like, you'll still get the packet and all the information, but we just need this to be approved so you guys can move on with the dredging.
Okay, but you do understand if anything else is added to that agenda, I will have to cancel another.
It's not going to be. It's literally this and possibly one other thing that needs signing, and you'll get the information for that too. And it's a system you've already talked about.
Good.
Courtney, are you looking for one more person?
I need one more person. So far, we have Mike, Janet,
It's in my phone.
Monday, and Ryan and Justina.
Monday at
And
what?
At 2.
Yeah, I can do it.
What time?
2 o'clock.
Okay, I can't do that, right.
Good, thank you. So
That's just
2 o'clock
Monday.
Monday at, on Zoom, I guess, Courtney, you'll be sending us another link?
Yep, I'll send you all the information tomorrow.
Okay, and you'll post it,
Yep,
obviously.
it has to be posted tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then we can all get it signed, right? We also have to get it signed?
Yeah, then it'll be in your office. You can come in at your leisure.
Okay. By Monday, everybody.
Okay, can we wrap up this meeting now? We got.
Yes,
topics
we
to
can.
do. Do we have another town administrator report?
No, sir, I have nothing new.
Helen has her hand up.
Who does?
Helen.
Helen, go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so a major event last Tuesday was with no judgment, just reporting, and I don't see it in the town administrator's report. Perhaps it was put in.
So what was it?
Don't interrupt me, Janet. Thank you. A major event, which is at the end of his probationary year, the town accountant was not continued. And without going into the pros and cons of that or anything else, because it's the town administrator's purview, it would have been good to know about it. Perhaps it was an oversight, but I never got anything about it. And I did look, and I was wondering if we could just briefly touch on the need for us to be in the know about things like that, even if it isn't under our jurisdiction, because losing the head of a department for whatever reason is a major event. And for example, in the town administrator's report, we have the announcement of Mike Flanagan's retirement. It's just so that we have some sense of what's going on. that were
So,
included?
Couple of things. One of this report was for last week's meeting.
Yes.
And the other is I did send something to everyone through that BOS email link. Were you able to see if you found that?
I never received anything.
It definitely
I
did.
looked at something.
You didn't.
Okay, maybe I
That's
didn't.
okay.
But certainly I
It's
thought I
glitch.
did.
Yeah, and that happens. God knows I've done it. But I was just touching on it in a general way. In other words, it wasn't in the report. We know why. And it's just good to know. You know?
No, and I thought I had sent it to everyone. Maybe I meant to look at it a little more and had not sent it, but my apologies for that mistake.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other topics for future discussion?
For future?
Yeah,
Okay, I do.
not for now.
Mike, you skipped select board reports.
Oh, yeah.
You had a big one and I had
If
one.
anybody had a report and no one raised their hand.
Oh, I thought I had. I have a major report.
Okay, give us a report.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Dorian and I, in fact, attended the site visit in the cemetery, and it was very informative, very useful. We have a document that was sent to us by a person who I was very impressed with, who professionally does that kind of work. She didn't, she wasn't trolling for work. And we walked around, and I subsequently then went to the Duck Creek Cemetery, the one that's right next to PJ's. It's between the Catholic Cemetery and PJ's, Kahuna Hollow Road, and looked at the gravestones there. And the thing I want to deliver to the select board is that the work done on a good many of the stones was at best unorthodox, and at worst it was frightening. It was way worse than the pictures let us know. So thanks to the person who brought this to the attention of the cemetery commissioners 4 years ago, and thanks to the fact that we are now aware of it.
Looks like we lost her.
Lost her.
Helen?
Yep.
Helen disappeared.
Okay.
Okay, I think we got the gist of her report. Do we have another select board report for anyone? My report is that this meeting has gone on for 3 hours and 42 minutes.
You did a great job, Mike.
I don't know. Okay, so let's go on to correspondence report. Do we have any?
I think future discussions has to be had still.
Oh, yeah, all right. We were in the middle of that. Future discussions. They're all over the place. Janet?
Oh, I didn't think I raised my hand. Nope, sorry. I would just say add meeting with Superintendent Carlstrom if that happens.
Okay. Strong, okay. Ryan?
A couple of things. And one is one that you brought up in the last meeting. We need to meet with wastewater soon. I think that they have a meeting tomorrow with in regards to with the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force. I think we need to see them fairly soon, so we know where that is, or
Yeah.
where they are. Let's see. I would like to also have an opportunity for Rich Pauley to discuss long-term fire management plans in the woodlands of Wellfleet.
Okay.
And then a request for the cemetery commission to appear at a future meeting. I don't know if any of you read the Provincetown Independent article, but they've spent almost $100,000 on these restorations and maintenance. I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is, but it was like $98,000 or something. And then, yeah, bike and walkways. I think that's it.
Bike and walkways.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on availability of people, so.
I would like to just have them come with, if the superintendent's coming.
Yep.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah, I'm back.
Helen.
And I was finished with the cemetery site visit report, but I urge you to just go and walk around and take a look.
Okay.
Because it makes a difference. And to read the report that came from that contractor.
Okay, but Helen, we're on topics of future discussion now.
I know. I have nothing right now that hasn't
Okay,
already
just
been
email
brought up.
Courtney if you think of something, or me and Courtney.
No, it was already brought up by other people. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have anything right now. I'll think of something later. Okay, correspondence report.
We already
Anything?
went through it.
Okay.
Minute.
Minutes, let's approve them.
I move to approve the minutes of September 8th, 2020 as printed in draft.
Second,
Helen, second.
okay, roll call.
Helen, abstain.
Janet, I.
Tina, I.
Brian, I, sorry.
Michael, aye. Okay.
And I move to approve the minutes of September 11th, 2020 as printed in the draft.
Helen, second.
Roll call vote. Sorry.
Helen, abstain.
Janet, I.
Justina, I.
Brian, I.
Michael, aye. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move
I
to
so move.
second.
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Justina, I.
Brian, I.
Michael, aye.
Bye, guys.
See you
I'm
guys.
out of here. Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.